It's funny because I've seen other interviews with you, and it's always just like the notorious, the most controversial. But yeah, Nick Fuentes, man. I've seen a lot of your stuff. I heard about you through, obviously the internet. People, oh, watch this guy's stuff. Seen some stuff. Some stuff I'm like going kind of far, understandable in some cases. Some cases I'm like, doesn't need to be said. But regardless, you definitely seem to have a really strong voice in this entire like political space, commentating. I believe you have a very successful show.
Thank you.
What is it like being almost seems like enemy number one to the government?
It's tough. It's weird because I feel like I do a talk show.
Yeah.
So in a way, I don't do exactly the same thing as you, but ultimately I do videos. I live stream myself giving speeches about politics, and I've been on the no-fly list. I've had my bank accounts frozen. I've had people try to kill me at my house. And so I've sort of accepted it. It's normal for me. I've been doing it for 10 years, but sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I feel like a terrorist, but I do a talk show, or at least that's how I'm treated. So, but it's like anything, you get acclimated to it, you get used to it.
Where did it start for you? Because I from what I understand, early on in your career, you started questioning. I think were you working with the Daily Wire?
No, I almost was.
You almost were.
They almost brought me
and
on.
you started asking questions about the Israel lobby,
right?
And that was like what? How many years ago?
That was in 2017. So that was 8 years ago.
And after that, it was just like it was downhill from there, as far as like you being able to do all this stuff without backlash.
Yes. Yeah, there were kind of two things that were happening at that time. I was in college. I was at Boston University. And the thing that people don't realize is that's where they groom all the conservative influencers. So Turning Point, all the different campus groups, they're looking for like the young, best and brightest conservative people. And when they get into those groups, they then start their career towards being a Fox News host or being a Daily Wire host or something like that. And I was very much in that pipeline. I was very much on that trajectory to being like a conservative pundit, at least at the very early stages. And they basically realized early on in the beginning of 2017 that I was not going with the program on that one issue, on Israel. It wasn't even anything else, but I just insisted that it was not consistent with what everyone else was saying. Trump in the inaugural said it's America first. And I said, well, there's one country that seems to be the exception there, and I would never let that go. And so one track is that I was being actively canceled and blacklisted by the conservatives. And so that actually happened first because I wasn't really known. I was just an 18-year-old kid. I had 1,000 followers on Twitter. I was getting 100 live viewers on my show. I really had no big following, but people were moving behind the scenes. It was like a whisper campaign saying, don't hire this guy. Don't bring him on your podcast. This guy's bad.
And how did you
news.
know that?
I was being told that by people who were sympathetic.
And I'm sorry to interrupt a little bit, but do you also believe that even if it was the Democratic side, would you have still got the same pushback?
I'm sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Because, in both sides, you do have this kind of censorship. You do have control that emanates from the center.
Yeah.
So I think even more so on the left. People are surprised that it happens on the right because we say that the right is the free marketplace of ideas.
Yeah.
And you can express yourself and be politically incorrect, but that's only up to a certain point, up to a limit. So I was getting canceled. The first big thing is I had guys from Campus Reform, which is like a student-run group. They would report on the left-wing outrage on the campus. Those guys were coming after me. The Daily Wire crowd was coming after me, bad-mouthing me on Twitter, behind the scenes. I got banned from CPAC, which is the big conservative convention.
Right.
And so one track is that in the industry, I was just blacklisted from the start, throttling my career from the rip. But then the second track, the kind of second thing that's happening is that then you have the social media censorship, which is ramping up.
Yeah.
So after Trump wins the election, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, they all gradually, incrementally start cracking down. And between those two things, it was like a pincer. I could get no opportunities, no platforms, no jobs, no interviews, no institutional support from the conservatives. at the same time, I couldn't make my own career because I got banned on PayPal, YouTube, ultimately then Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and they just kind of cascaded one after the other. And
what
so,
was that like? They're sending you emails, or like you're just trying to post and it's like your account's gone? Like, what does that look like?
it was dreadful because you would wake up literally one day, you try to go on your app, like as you know you do, you go on Twitter, whatever, and then you're done, you're gone. You would wake up, you try to open up your account, and you would be signed off automatically. You try to sign back in, oh, there's an error. You check your email, and they'd send you an email. Your account has been permanently suspended, and most of the time they don't even give you a reason.
Yeah,
They just say violations of our TOS. And you appeal and you ask them, what did I violate? What's a specific thing? But it's so opaque, they don't tell you anything. And so you're just waiting for that other shoe to drop every day.
Yeah.
And it's not even just the social platforms, but banks, airlines, Airbnb, even obscure things.
What is banks like? They're just like, hey, you got to get your money out of the account. Your account's closed.
Yep. You get a letter in the mail and they'd say, we've made the decision to close your checking account. They say because of reputational risk. That's the excuse they use. And they'll call you on the phone and say you have 90 days to move all your money out of the account.
Wow. Okay, so but before all this stuff happened, before you even really got into politics, like how did you find your way there? Why did you find your way there?
Well, I was precocious. When I was like 12 years old, I was really into politics, but I was reading what was available in the mainstream. Back when I was 12 or 13, this had to be back in 2012, right around there. There wasn't a lot of online content on social media from conservatives. They were a little late to the party. And so what you had was Breitbart, Prager University.
Right.
They didn't call it Daily Wire. Back then, they called it PJ Media. That was Ben Shapiro's outfit. And so I just downloaded all that stuff. And I was a big libertarian, neocon, actually. I was a big supporter of Israel, believe it or not, because that's just what there was. If you were a conservative and you were looking for viral conservative content on YouTube, it was all pro-Israel, pro-free market, this kind of stuff. So
you weren't a gamer at all? You weren't playing video games at that age?
I was a gamer, but I was really more a political nerd. I was like a big geek.
That was like your first love.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. At that age, it's nuts because I was just playing Halo. I'm gonna be honest with you. Again, a different generation. I think I'm 10 years older, so I was in the Halo. I just figured maybe you would have been on COD or something.
Yeah, I played. I did a little video games, but I wasn't good at them. I was always just more of a nerd when it came to the politics.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy, man. Because what I find interesting about you, because I've seen your show a few times, you do everything sort of off the cuff, like off the dome. Where are you actually getting your information? Like, how are you digesting all this and retaining this?
Well, I get it from everywhere. I just read the New York Times every day. And I know people will be surprised to hear that, but every day I just read everything in the New York Times. I read everything on Axios, which is another news platform, which is very mainstream. But I'm just on Twitter all day, getting tips and getting information. You know how it is. These days, to get the really hot stuff, the current events, you got to be on Twitter following people that are in the know.
My question with that is, I feel like I'm getting to a point of, and I don't know if it's just because the overall presentation of certain things or certain events that are happening, but I'm always like, is this real? Is this the truth, or is this, they're always like, oh, it's Russian propaganda, or it's propaganda from this side or that side, or I'm always like, because whenever you say, oh, this is a thing, it's always like, well, that's not real. That's not true. Like, how do you know what's true? How do you discern what's true and what's not true?
Well, the thing is, when you have a lot of deep background knowledge, you can read the New York Times and sort of read between the lines of what they're really saying or what they mean, because, everyone's getting the same news. Everyone's getting the same news from the Newswire, from the Associated Press, or from Reuters, or the U.S. intelligence community. If you are a discerning reader, you kind of have to know the motivations of the sources. So if they come out, like with the current war with Iran or in Gaza, if they come out and they say U.S. intelligence says this or the Israeli government says that, if you kind of have a sense of what they want and what they're pushing, you kind of understand why they're saying what they're saying. And I guess maybe it starts from a simple assumption, which is they're going to report something and you're going to have a reaction. Now, your reaction was their intention. Whatever your response is, you have to think they wanted me to respond in this way. So, for example, years ago, there was a story about Russia was paying Islamists in the Middle East to kill Americans. They were putting a bounty on the heads of American soldiers. Now, if you think at that time, what do they want me to think? They want me to be anti-Russia. They want me to think Trump is being soft on Russia. So if the average reader is reading this and not thinking too much, they're going to say, Trump is soft on Russia. He needs to be harder.
Right.
That's a way for the New York Times to pressure the Trump administration to be more tough on Russia. They're trying to incite the population to have a certain opinion and demand that he has a certain foreign policy posture. And so it's not necessarily, you go to a certain obscure website that has all the real information.
Right.
It's more like you just kind of need to have a certain sense and a certain background knowledge to see what is the intention of the mainstream media, to kind of read between the lines and understand it's a regulated press.
Yeah. So when you do that, though, you don't think you have biases when in your sort of assumptions of, okay, what is the real thing here?
I do. I think everybody has a bias, but I just try my best to be objective. I try my best. That's why I read something like the New York Times, or I read the institutional press. I read the Israeli press, for that matter.
Yeah.
For all I get heat, the big thing, people say I'm anti-Semitic. I read the Jerusalem Post. I read the Times of Israel every day, to get every side of the equation.
Yeah. Why do you think, though? What do you think the biggest reason is why people say you're anti-Semitic?
Well, it's just like everything else. There was a time, which I think we're now emerging out of, thankfully. You can call it wokeness, you can call it political correctness, but there was this time of immense sensitivity for maybe 10, 15, 20 years in the country, where if you say anything that is against the grain on race, on Jews, on women, on homosexuals, on transgenders, you get called these names: racist, sexist, anti-Semite, Islamophobe, homophobe. And, I got started really at the peak of that period in 2017, at the height of that like anti-Trump hysteria. People forget even what it was like. Now it kind of goes without saying, the things you hear on Joe Rogan, the things you hear from Theo Von, Shane Gillis, you say they would have never gotten away with that 10 years ago. So I consider myself to be relatively moderate, and I know you would have to push back. I have a provocative sense of humor. I'm pretty bombastic, but I consider myself moderate.
Yeah. This is the one thing about you that because I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen like the Hitler comments, the when you say the N-word jokingly, and I see it and I think, like, not that all those things are so bad, but to the majority of people who are like looking at you from the outside and not knowing enough, they're going to immediately sort of disavow you. Right. So like I was talking to Dan about this too. Like a lot of stuff he says, he'll tweet a lot of stuff. And I'm not saying whether it's true or untrue or false or not, but it can come across to the majority who are like, this just seems like a hateful individual because they're saying this, because they're willingly saying that, and they're joking about that. And I'm not saying I'm in the right all the time. I joke about stupid shit all the time. Sometimes I'm like, damn, I wish I didn't say that. Is there anything that you wish you didn't say, or you didn't sort of transverse the way that you have?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things where after the show, I sort of immediately regret it. And I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have. Yeah, I went a little too hard here. And you know how it is when you're a content creator, even a comedian. I consider myself something like a comedian. I make a lot of jokes. My show's very funny. And I think any comedian will tell you, especially when you're doing it improv, when you're doing it without a script, and you don't have that time to kind of think about it, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you do a joke and it doesn't land. It doesn't work. It's too far. It has the wrong tone, maybe. Yeah. And so I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I do get what you're saying. But a big part of what I do that I think a lot of people don't realize, when I got started at the age of 18, there are these like nonprofit groups like the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, Right Wing Watch, which is under People for the American Way. There are these, and it's not to make excuses, but this is how it works. you do have these left-wing nonprofits. They're paid by the left or various billionaires, and their job, it's literally they will have interns and people on the payroll that watch my show every single night as a left-wing person or someone that disagrees with me. And they will literally clip. And I'm sure you know, even this is how it works in media in general. Anything that sounds bad, even if it's a joke, even if there's bigger context, they will take the 10-second clip and they say, oh, the white nationalist hater is at it again. He just said this, and deprived of the context of the tone, if it's a joke. Over 10 years, I do a show every night. You collect enough of those 10-second clips, you can paint a picture of somebody where it's like, this is a lunatic, this is a raving maniac. And a lot of people don't realize this is a political operation that gets paid to create these clips for the purpose of reputational destruction. And I decided from an early age, I'm not playing games. I'm not going to be guarded all the time and manage everything I say. Oh, I hope this doesn't sound bad in a 5-second clip. I said, I'm going to be myself. And I always thought eventually people will watch the show and they'll figure out who I really am. But that is a very dishonest aspect of the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. There's that even outside of that, your specific political sphere, that happens on the internet, period, for creators, for anything, whether it's like some relationship drama or some parasocial shit where they're like, oh, this is happening. Or, I mean, the most popular thing I think recently is like the live streamers, they'll get a clip and they'll put, and this is not specific to any single person, but they'll put like a caption over a video where it's like, it's just to create sensationalism of a situation that isn't actually that sensational. Right. But I guess I'm kind of curious on you is, do you, as you do your show or as you say certain things, are you aware, because I would consider you a very smart individual, are you aware of the sensationalness where you're also adding fuel to that? Because you know that that's a real thing that's going to happen regardless. Are you also willfully doing that, knowing that?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I'm baiting them all the time. And actually early on, I think I did that a lot more when I was younger than I do now. I think I'm a little more mature. I'm a little more disciplined. But when I was younger and it was a different ecosystem, you almost had to bait them because we were, and by we, I mean the far right, conservatives, we were being censored and even shadow banned. We were being suppressed. Yeah. And so at that time, it's like the only way to break out, especially for me, because I wasn't getting on Fox News. I wasn't getting on. Usually that's the program. If you're a conservative, you get the interview spot on Fox, on Blaze, on Daily Wire. I was blacklisted from everything and censored. So it was like the only way to break containment was to be outrageous. And so I'm not going to lie, I absolutely baited it. But the overriding priority for me always is just to try and be funny, to try and be entertaining and provocative and funny. And some people look at me and say, well, you're kind of cynically baiting people and you're a provocateur. I don't think I'm a provocateur. I think that I try to be challenging and funny. And by essence, that is provocative. If you try to be funny and you're not provocative, to me, that comes across as safe and stale and boring and not fresh. The things that are fresh and exciting and outrageous, they tend to be provocative. The stuff that people say, it's a guilty pleasure. They're like, I hate that I'm laughing at this, but it's so funny. I love that stuff. So that was always my goal.
I get it. It's just, I think in your sphere, like your ecosystem of political commentating, everyone going into it, or watching or consuming the content or seeing you speak about, these big issues, geopolitical things, they're looking at you more so, I think, through that lens and not through the lens of a comedian. So when the comedy comes in, they're like, is this guy just hate this or hate that or hate those people, hate these people? I think that's how it can come across that, in my opinion, would then lessen your ability to reach a whole group of people that would be more apt to listen to you than they are because there's the jokes.
Right.
But at the same time, I can't tell you or any person how to should make content or how they need to show up in their content. But I think that's a large part of it. Cause then like we were talking earlier, the groups that are there set out to sort of be like, hey, this is a bad guy. Don't listen to him, essentially.
Right.
Disavow him. It makes their job way easier. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I would just say that, just a life philosophy is I just tend to be a free thinker.
Yeah.
And I think everybody considers themselves a free thinker, but I think that the moment that you start to tell yourself, I have to be on guard, I have to watch what I say, I think it's kind of all or nothing. You're either going to be that way and you're going to be very controlled and very intentional and you're going to be very almost calculated and strategic, or you're just going to let it fly and you're going to be yourself and you kind of let the chips fall where they will. And I guess it's a matter, it really is like a fundamental life philosophy. I always thought, yeah, people are going to hate me. People are going to hate this. They're going to hate what I'm about to say. But that's also a big part of changing people's minds. I'm a big believer in you almost have to kind of shock people out of the old ways of thinking. I'm not a believer in this sort of, it's a big debate that goes on the right wing. Do you favor an incremental approach? Do you kind of drip feed and, leave a crumb trail where people can kind of find their way? Or do you punch them in the face, metaphorically, and say, this is the truth, it's outrageous, it's raw. And at first people are appalled, but then they're thinking about it, and then they're on your side. It's sort of like you plant the seed. And being entertaining, I think, is part of it. If you take it almost too seriously, it almost plays worse. If you're me and you're very stern and very serious, people start to say, this guy is evil. This guy is like a calculating sociopath menace. Whereas if you kind of let your guard down and are vulnerable, wear your heart on your sleeve and say, I'm just a funny, weird guy, I think in a way it's almost disarming if people give you a chance,
It's just interesting because exactly what you said, I would speak to people in the industry about doing an interview with you, and they're like, no, he's a calculated evil guy. But so it's like, it goes,
so maybe it's backfiring.
So I'm like, for whatever that's worth, it's just, I think you got yourself there somehow. Right. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's certain comments you've made, like, you talk about, people say, oh, you're this white nationalist. Like, are you a white supremacist?
No,
okay.
No, I don't consider myself. I'm a believer in race. I think that race is real. Yeah. I think that there's white people and black people, and that it's real and it means something to us.
Yeah.
But I'm a Catholic, so I think that we're all created equal by God.
Right. And so I guess kind of getting into this, your political sort of idea of what you want America to really look like. You want it to be more Catholic. You want it to be more Catholic driven, more Catholic sort of, I don't know if the right word is owned. Mm-hmm. But that's where you're coming from. That's where like a lot of your messaging comes from.
Yeah. I want it to be more Christian, and in part I'm Catholic. So in particular Catholic. And I think it needs to be more white. I do think it needs to be more European. I think that, and I get this comment a lot. People say, well, you're Mexican. Your last name is Fuentes.
Yeah.
And it's true. My father is half Mexican. His father's 100% Mexican. We've always had black people in this country, Hispanics, Asians, going back hundreds of years. But we've had like 50 million immigrants come in 30 years. And I'm sitting here looking at a city like LA or like Chicago or New York, and I'm saying, when is enough enough? We've had 50, 60 million people.
That's my question to you is, how do you even say when enough is enough? Like, how, on your side, I understand your perspective, but where is it for you or for me or for anyone to say this is enough? Because this country also was founded on that basis of immigrants.
Well, I would push back on that a little bit. I would say that when the country was founded, it was almost all English people. It was almost all Northern Europeans, and almost all Protestants too. So it was ethnically homogeneous, racially homogeneous, religiously and culturally homogeneous. On all four of those cylinders, you had uniformity. And then you're right, in the 19th century, it was no longer ethnically homogeneous because Germans and Southern Europeans and
Italians.
I'm Italian too. Yeah. I'm half Italian. Yeah. We started coming in. And then in the turn of or I guess midway through the last century, then other races started coming in with other religions. And I guess the country has changed over time. There's no disputing that. And the changes are baked in. We're never going back in some sense. And I don't think it's even possible. But when you say it's enough is when they no longer are assimilating. When you start to feel like what America is, it starts to become uncertain. Does it mean speaking English? Does it mean being Christian? Does it mean having certain European values or constitutional values for that matter? A lot of the people coming in, they contest these things. And so you look at a city like LA where, a few weeks ago, they're waving the Mexican flag, burning cars, protesting that illegals are being deported, you say, is this a free-for-all or is this a country? Or even in Texas, they want to build like a giant Muslim community center where people say that's going to be like Sharia law. There's going to be a giant mosque in the middle of it. Or in other places, they build a giant Hindu temple with huge statues. And you say, is America a whole? Is it a country? Or is it a patchwork of all these grafted nationalities where they kind of set up little India, little Somalia in Minnesota, little Mexico? And I think it's kind of undermining our national coherence.
But who is to decide what that is?
Well, ultimately, the people of the country, you know. I mean, we have a system where people vote. And I think that that's really what the Trump election was about. I think in 16 and 20, and even in some sense in 24, it was a referendum on what do we want America to be? Because Hillary Clinton said, forward, it's going to be the future is female and more diversity and more wokeness and more gayness and more everything. And Trump said, no, we're in a sense going back. We're making America great again. There's like this recurrence. And I think that was a big referendum. The country said, we want the country to kind of be a little more conservative. We don't want to go so fast, so forward, and keep going in that same progressive direction.
But do you think that means that there just needs to be no inclusion of all those other things, you know, the mosque, these other things that we mentioned couldn't exist?
No, absolutely not. And I have a kind of complicated view on this. America has 350 million people. We're one of the most populous, one of the biggest countries. And we're, in a sense, no longer a republic, or even some would say, strictly speaking, a nation. Some say we're past that. We're really more, when you think about it, like Russia or like China, in the sense that we are a multi-ethnic, multi-religious empire. And so a country like Russia, they have a lot of Muslims living in Russia. They have a lot of Asians living in Russia. But when you think of a Russian, you think of a Slavic, ethnically Russian, Eastern Orthodox person. Nevertheless, Chechens and Dagestanis and Tatars and others are part of Russian identity. They're just on the periphery. Same thing in China. When you think of China, you think of a Han, ethnically Chinese person that speaks Cantonese or something like that. But you have Mongolians, Uyghurs. You have a lot of diversity in China. I think America can be the same way. We can be America with a black minority, which we always have had. We can be America with a large Hispanic minority. But the question is, if diversity goes too far, eventually America becomes nothing. Without that demographic core, without that monoculture that you could say America is rock and roll, hot dogs, baseball, red, white, and blue. In 50 years, is America going to be highlight and soccer and cricket and, you know, and people are speaking all these different languages? I'm concerned about preserving that ethnic core. So we can be America with diversity. We just can't have so much diversity that there's no longer an America.
I see what you're saying. I guess my thought, like when I hear that is, you know, you talk about the future and like where it all goes. At some point, I mean, it seems like we're just going to be part human, part cyborg. Or excuse me, cyborg, right? Part human, part machine. Overall, not even speaking just America straight. And I guess I understand the ideas. It's just like when I think about it, who's deciding that, right? Like why? Because okay, we're getting to this the talk about the conflict in Gaza and the Israel stuff, and because I just when I have this whole conversation, I think about this, I go, well, what about what we did to the fucking Indians? What about what we did to the indigenous people? I mean, we essentially did what a lot of people today would say Israel is doing to the people in Palestine, which is like removing these people from this area, right? What they call it? Genocide, ethnic cleansing, all these things, right? We essentially did that, took this space here. So I sometimes I have this conversation with people, a lot of times off camera. I'm like, at what point do we decide that it's not okay anymore? And I don't think killing, murdering people, removing people from a country, removing people from an area is ever okay. But America was also founded on that. So at what point are we discerning and saying that like, okay, now is like, for example, if we speak about Israel and in that whole conflict in Gaza, that's not okay. I do think it's not okay. I don't think it's right. At the same time, our country was also founded on a similar action. We came in, we said, speak our language. This is our religion. Here's a lot of diseases because you know your immune system didn't jive with ours. We basically took this country, and then we made it what we're talking about right now. So like when I hear it from like a really like bird's eye perspective, like I don't have skin in all these games. I'm an American.
Mhm.
I love America. At the same time, I can look at it and say, well, it was founded on the same principles that, you know, we're demonizing this country for now. That's why we exist here.
Right.
So when is it right and when is it wrong?
Well, I would say that in terms of when I evaluate right and wrong, it comes down to individual actions, you know, because I understand what you're saying, which is that, and I'm actually even sympathetic to it. When you look at what the Israelis are saying in a certain sense, in a narrow sense, you can understand where they're coming from, which is that they were stateless. The Jews were without a country for 2,000 years. They were in that land, they were expelled, and then they were a minority in Europe and in all these other places. And because they were a minority, because they lacked power, they were abused. And so they were subject to the Inquisition and the pogroms and the Pale Settlement and the Holocaust ultimately and all these things. And that was the basis for Zionism, which is we need a country of our own. Now, easier said than done, because it turns out all the countries are taken, you know, so you have to settle one. And they came into the Mandate of Palestine and they fought with the Palestinians and they declared independence. You have to go through the whole history. But needless to say, they're sort of throwing elbows and jockeying to try and get comfortable in the Middle East, in a region that doesn't want them there. But the question becomes, how do you conduct the war? And I would point to something very simple. So in Gaza, they've destroyed all the infrastructure, like literally all of it, all the buildings, all the roads, hospitals, schools. It's intentional that they're doing that. And even when you look at how they're killing people, a veteran, a Green Beret, just came back the other day and said they're using Palestinians going to these aid distribution sites for target practice. So these people that are starving to death are going to get their food and water from these distribution sites, and they're getting shot by the IDF, defenseless, vulnerable people that are hungry. Hamas isn't even launching rockets anymore. They have no ability to counterattack. And you say, the Israelis will say, well, it's a war. That's what happens in a war. When you fight, people die. But in Iran, you can see in the war in June, they will literally target a single apartment with a drone strike. It's so precise. It's so targeted. They're doing assassination strikes with drones. They will hit one apartment. Forget about the whole building and the whole city. And so if you can detonate pagers and radios, if you can blow up one apartment, if you're the most sophisticated military with precision-guided munitions, how are you accidentally destroying 90% of the buildings and committing 100,000 civilian casualties and shooting children and people getting aid? At that point, it's intentional. And you look at what they say, which is, this is an ethnic cleansing. They say, we want all these people out of the land. Now, there's an argument to be made about how do you carry that out? I mean, what is the solution to Israel-Palestine? But you know the solution is not starving children to death and shooting innocent people that are defenseless and getting aid, blowing up their homes so they have nowhere to go. You know that's wrong. So that's where I come at it from. You can kind of get, the Israelis have a case to make that this is not an ideal living situation for them. At the same time, we all have moral responsibility. Especially now.
Yeah, the one thing I'll get on Twitter and I'll see just the reactions to this is like, even from like a lot of our, I don't know if they're Congress people or senators, they got that great check mark. Mm-hmm. And I see them and they're just like almost like hurrahing on this death of these innocent people, as if like, well, if they wanted it to stop, then Hamas would just stop.
Right.
And it always seems to be like the deflection. Because I'm like, but like you said, should it just be, well, they should just stop? And I see it and I'm like, that's just like complete void of humanity. Mm-hmm. Because what is this child supposed to do? Like, how are they supposed to rise up and be like, the 6-year-old be like, Hamas, please stop. Like,
right.
How does that work? And then my perspective shifts and I go, kind of like what you said, speaking of Israel and the precision and how much intelligence, and even what we're told as far as Israel being, our greatest ally, in the sense that they have this like superior intelligence and this superior military. And like, obviously they have a lot of our military because we give them so much aid and they buy stuff from us. Then you go like, it's almost like as if the United States with its superior power in military expertise and like the craziest intelligence would be like bombing Chicago and then being like, oh, but they should just figure it out. And it kind of makes me question, you know, like, cause then I'll see these things and they'll be like, well, this was a mistake and that was a mistake. And I'm like, but at the same time, we're told that they have the best intelligence. So how do you have this level of intelligence and this level of power and you still make these mistakes, you still do these things, or you still just blame the other side,
right?
Without being able to come to sort of like conclusion and like, you know, peace agreement or an actual ceasefire and stopping this, or how do we get those people out of there in a way that they're not being used as, you know, human shields or whatever they're saying. And then I'll see the tweets of these like people in our government just being like, fuck them, they should just give back the hostages and get Hamas out.
Right.
Like it feels helpless.
It does. And what's evil about it is that collective guilt where they say Hamas attacked us. Every 2 million people are now guilty. And not only are they guilty, but they get the death penalty. You know, Hamas did this attack and they believe it was perpetrated by 25,000 people. They say, well, now 2 million people are effectively sentenced to death. Everything is justified against them, whether they're armed or unarmed, whether they're men or women, whether they're adults or children. They're all guilty and they're all going to die for it in the most cruel way. They're starving them out. Like there's now over 100 deaths from famine. And these are pictures that are coming out. You don't see pictures like that coming out of Iraq or Afghanistan or any of the wars we've been involved in out of Ukraine. This is unique to this conflict where they've shut down all the food, all the water. And you realize it's intentional. And what the Israelis do is they just hide behind this narrative about, well, Hamas attacked us first. Does that mean you have no moral responsibility? I think everybody recognizes in a hostage situation, in any situation involving a soft target, you have moral responsibility, especially when you're the more powerful entity. Israel's a nuclear power. They have a nuclear arsenal. They've got modern fighter jets. They've got modern precision-guided missiles, a standing army, a country. The Palestinians have rockets, these tiny rockets. There's 20,000 of them. They don't have a government. They don't even have a state. And people say there's any kind of parity here. There's any kind of equality between these two regimes. Even when you're fighting an insurrection, you have culpability. And this is what I point out on my show to take it a step further. A lot of leftists will criticize the conduct of the Israeli government, and they'll say it's a racist government. They'll say it's a settler colonialist government. It's capitalist. That's why they're evil. I would contend it is on some level because they are not Christian. Because Netanyahu gave a speech last year, and he said that the Palestinians are Amalek. Amalek is a biblical term. It refers to a story in the Old Testament where the Israelites wipe out an entire race. They're called the Amalekites. And Yahweh tells them, kill all the women, all the children, murder all of them, genocide them so their bloodline stops. That's the language Netanyahu uses, which is literally...
Those are his own words.
He said they're Amalek, yes. And that's a reference to that Bible story. And if you read anything about the Israeli government, anything even about Talmudic Judaism, what they say is, we don't love our enemies. They say that the non-Jews, we don't even consider them human. They don't have souls. They don't have moral culpability. They say, and we have very little regard for their lives.
Is the Talmud, though, is that their governing sort of book, or is it the Torah?
That is their governance. So the Torah is the Hebrew Bible. And technically, the Talmud is part of the Torah. Torah means teaching. So you have the written Torah, which is the Hebrew Bible. Then you have what is called the oral Torah, which is a tradition that was passed down orally. Now, the basis of Judaism is the 613 commandments in the Bible. So there's the 10 commandments that are famous, but there are other commandments about clothing, about diet, about all these other things. You know, when you think about Jewish people, they're very litigious about how they cut their hair, about if they can mix fabrics, about how they wash their hands, if they can mix meat and dairy. So they have 613 commandments. That is what you would call the written Torah. The oral Torah is how they interpret and apply those. 613 is not enough to govern every facet of life. So what the rabbis do is they have to interpret how they apply. That's what you call the Talmud. And the Talmud is It's basically rabbis debating each other about how we interpret those commandments. And it's been refined and rewritten over thousands of years. But that is the basis of Jewish law. It's those written commandments and the oral application of them. That constitutes the whole of Jewish law. So it is the Torah also.
Because I feel like as I've talked to Jewish people about the Talmud, and they sort of dismiss it as if it's not the main governance of like their religion.
It is, though. Any Jewish student who goes to a yeshiva or a Jewish school, that's like Ben Shapiro, he studies the Talmud. The Talmudic Judaism, that is the Judaism of today. Without it, you can't interpret Jewish law.
And so your conclusion, your assumption is that if they were Christian or if they were Catholic, it wouldn't be like that?
I wouldn't necessarily say that it wouldn't be like that, but in principle, you could oppose it. Because what a Christian says is love your enemy, turn the other cheek, pray for your enemy. Because we believe that everybody is a child of God. We believe, contrary to the Jews, Christianity is a universal religion, meaning that all someone has to do as a Catholic, we believe, is profess a belief in Jesus Christ, get baptized, be confirmed into the church. Anyone can be a Catholic. Jews do not believe that. Jews believe that you can only be a Jew by
you're born into it, yeah,
right, by the matrilineal line, matrilineally, by the mother. And so Christians then say, we forgive the enemy. You know, the golden commandment is treat your neighbor like yourself and forgive your enemy. And so I think that if you had a Christian government prosecuting this war, someone could credibly say, this is contrary to our religion.
So, okay. So I gotta kind of contest a little bit this idea, right? And the reason being is that when I think about all of these issues and I think about just the world in general, I don't know if could it be assumptive that it's just because of a religion? Because we could look at Catholicism, Christianity, like how much stuff have we done that's fucked up? Like we talk about what we did over here, coming to America, we speak our language. This is your religion now. You worship the earth and the ground and the seasons, and that's wrong. This is right. So that concept, we also did that in the name of God, in the name of Catholicism, to a whole group of people. So when you say this, like I hear it and I could understand why you think that based on their teachings, but at the same time, we believe the same things that you're talking about now, then we still murdered a bunch of people for our, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, and that's why I say it wouldn't make it impossible. That's why I was careful to say you could credibly say in principle, if a Christian government were doing what they're doing, you could point to the letter of the law and say, this is wrong. Because you're right, Christian regimes have done bad things in the past. But I think a big reason why things have gotten better, when you say, why was it that hundreds of years ago there was conquest, and how can you say the laws of conquest are no longer allowed today? That it's wrong. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If it was right for us to do it, why is it not right for the Israelis to do it? I would say that part of the reason why things have gotten better over time, why there are now laws of war and a right to protect, why there are, we look at what's happening in Israel, people say this is wrong. I think a big part of it is because of Christianity. I mean, let's not pretend it was the Christian West which evangelized the world. I mean, yes, there was colonialism all around the world, but also there were missionaries that evangelized the indigenous people. When the Europeans came to this continent, there was human sacrifice, there was cannibalism, and it was, contrary to what people believe, it was widespread because the indigenous people in particular here, they couldn't get protein because they ate so much corn. Like a lot of it was because of their diet. There were a lot of problems with that. Cannibalism was a huge part of their culture. Human sacrifice, child sacrifice. And so, yes, we brought smallpox, and yes, we brought with us imperialism, which had a cultural expression as well, but we also made them Christian. And same thing in Africa, and same thing in Asia.
So you're not wrong. You're absolutely right. But the idea that I'm speaking to is, at what point is it okay for someone to implement or to force their beliefs onto another person? And at what point is it not okay? When is it okay? When is it not okay? Because you said they come and they evangelize these people, right? What does that mean? It means make them apart, believe what we believe.
Right.
Like what I'm saying is, how are we just determining as humans when that's right and wrong? Like you're sitting in this position and I'm having this conversation right now today, and we're talking about the past and we're talking about what's current. But at the same time, what I'm getting at is that it's still a human thing where how are we discerning that now is okay and then it wasn't, or now it's not okay, but then it was? Because I hear what you're saying.
Right.
But it's still going in the circle of like, well, we made it better, but we made it better for us.
I think we made it better for the whole world. I think
do you think the indigenous people, do you think the people who were here before, like they made it better for me? No, they killed them.
I think but there's a survivorship bias there, isn't there? In the sense that the people that were killed by cannibalism and human sacrifice, they're not around today to say, yeah, but I'm sure they would think it's better.
But I'm saying the people that we came and killed because they didn't like want to join us because they liked their way of life. Mm-hmm. They liked the way that they lived. They liked the things that they sort of believed in or worshiped or thought were right at that time.
Right.
Like that was their whole, like right now it's the same thing as if someone came into the US and was like from a different planet and was like, this is now your way of life. If you don't like it, we're going to kill you. And you have to believe this and you have to think this, and this is your new religion. The concept is still the exact same thing.
Right.
And so like, that's the in my brain, I'm like, it's a human thing. Mm-hmm. I think humans are just innately greedy.
I
fucking
agree with
evil.
You.
Like,
I agree. Well, and let's also not pretend that colonialism was inherently motivated by evangelization. I'm not making that case. What I'm saying is that because the Christian West kind of won the last 500 years through colonialism and the technological race and everything else, my point is when we look at something like Gaza and we say that's against the rules of war, who created the rules of war? They were created out of World War I at the pinnacle of all these Christian empires, in my opinion, motivated by Christian principles. It wasn't the communists that made any kind of prohibitions against human rights violations. It wasn't Muslims. It wasn't Jews. It was the Christians. And, you know, to your point about what you're saying is really something like moral relativism. At what point do you say, we're right, you're wrong, it's going to be our way? And I think that first, it's a question of how do you know you're right? And I would say conscience is a big one. As Catholics, we believe that God wrote the moral law on our heart. We inherently know right and wrong. When we see a vulnerable person being attacked, you know, there was like a clip the other day. There's like a lot of these videos now of like, you know, interracial violence, like black people beating up white people and vice versa. And one thing that people point out is like brutality. Let's say somebody gets knocked down. A lot of the times in these videos, you see people that start kicking their head. Someone gets knocked on the ground and the attacker is kicking them in the head, stomping them, even past the point where the person's not a threat. And everyone goes, ooh, that's wrong. You know, they shouldn't do that. So we have conscience, we have revelation. According to the Old Testament, you have the prophets, but there's other claims. There's Joseph Smith, there's Muhammad, you have to evaluate those revelations. You have to evaluate the philosophies. That's every person's decision to make. But once you determine what's right, I think you have a moral obligation, actually, to fight for what's right, to fight for justice. Yeah. And to not say, well, let them be evil over there, you know? Yeah.
But that goes back to like, well, who's believing, like whose perspective is saying what is right and what is justice. Mm-hmm. And it's obviously unique to everyone as far as they're drawing the lines back to religion, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
So that's where it's like, you know, you could have this conversation about the worst individuals in history and say, did they believe that what they were doing was right at the time when they did it? Right. I would say that I believe everyone thinks they're doing what is right at the time when they're doing it, because that's what we do. We do. I believe people do the best that they can with what they have when they have it. And then, you know, obviously historically you look back and you go, maybe that wasn't the best. But I don't think like, do you think the Jewish people, or excuse me, not just necessarily Jewish people, Israel and Israeli government is doing what they believe is right? Or do you think they're willfully doing what they believe is wrong?
Oh yeah, they absolutely are doing what they believe is right.
Okay.
But that's why I say you have to evaluate the different systems.
Yeah.
And say that in their system, what is their system based upon?
You're saying this religion. You're saying
100%, yes. And contrary even to what left-wing, because left-wing people say it's Zionism. I would say that Zionism obviously is inextricably connected to the Jewish religion. And what the Jewish religion, it's problematic. And you could even go to Jewish sources. There's a Israeli Jewish historian named Israel Shahak. He wrote a book. It's called 3,000 Years of History. And he talks about how for thousands of years, one of their great theologians, for example, Maimonides, they call him the Rambam, he is considered the Thomas Aquinas of Judaism, like the greatest scholar of Jewish law. He said that every Jew should pray for the death of every Christian every day. And this is loaded up in the Talmud. It's loaded up in Kabbalah, which is the mystic tradition, which is this intense hatred and distrust, in particular of Christians, but of all non-Jews in general. And many of the Zionist religious Jews, like the Kooks, actually they're called. There's a father and a son. Their name was Kook. They said they like that the Christian West is becoming atheist, because the sooner the Christian West becomes atheist, the sooner they will recognize the God of Israel and worship the Jews. It's like, so this is what they believe, and this is what is motivating their government, their ideology, and it's even members of Netanyahu's his own government, his ministers believe this stuff. The national security minister, the finance minister, members of the Knesset.
And how do you verify that? How can you verify that?
They say it. It's in the Times of Israel. It's their press. It's in their statements. You don't have to look very far. You know, there's, I'll give you an example. So one of their ministers, I think it's either Smotrich or Ben Gvir, there was a highly publicized incident where Jews were spitting on Christian missionaries, spitting on them who were making a pilgrimage to the Christian holy sites, and it caused a big controversy in Israeli society. This is the Times of Israel. One of the current Israeli ministers said, spitting on Christians, that's an old Jewish tradition. It's not a crime. They shouldn't be arrested for that. It's fine. He defended this. So that's just one example. But I mean, if you literally just read what they write, it's all there.
So you're saying that they're willfully like just professing this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And some of the more tactful ones will look at the extremists like that and say, "Oh, you don't say that publicly," because they want to maintain the illusion that everything's good between us and them.
You don't think that maybe that some of them want it to not necessarily be that way?
I do. I think
there's like a lot of that stuff obviously is not directly correlated to how we act or how we are in you know, our regards to religion, and it still shifts, it still grows. Like we could talk about Catholicism and their kids and doing all this stuff. We're like, that's wrong. Most of us believe that's wrong. It happened. I don't know if it's still currently happening. I could only assume so.
Right.
But then there's the ones who go, that's wrong. What the fuck are you doing? They got lawsuits for this. And so my point is, like, don't you believe that, you know, even in this case, we're talking about Judaism and Israel, that there are some that are like, okay, this is wrong. This shouldn't be this way. We are evolving.
And there are, and absolutely there are. And I want to clarify, I'm not saying all Christians are good people, all Jews are bad. That would obviously be ignorant, because
that's insane.
We're all people, and everybody individually is both good and bad. Everybody individually makes good and bad decisions. So it would be ridiculous to say that. But in terms of a system of ideas, some systems of ideas are flawed. And I think that when you compare Christianity in principle, meaning relating to the definition of Christianity is self-sacrifice. Because Christianity is the idea of the Christ, which is giving your life for the sake of everyone, even those that put you on the cross. That's Christ, right?
Yeah.
Is the idea that he was nailed there and forgave them. Whereas the Jewish religion is based on something entirely different.
Yeah, this conversation is so interesting because we're relating, you know, these theological ideas to humans. And I mean, that's, you know, how we show up and how we believe or we think is right versus wrong. And then there's like what actually happens, though. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think it's easy to stand from any position and speak like, this is it. And, you know, God wrote this, or this was in this Testament, Old Testament. But are people really ever following that to a T? Are they really ever doing that on all sides and all religions? You know, I give so many examples. Like, I have Muslims friends that, you know, they pray, but then, you know, I see them over here at a strip club, you know, or
Right.
drinking, or it's so. My thing is like, we're having this conversation right now about religion and God and the idea, and these obviously, you know, these different religions have these different perceptions of God and what it is and how it exists and how it relates to them, and then human.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I've just always personally been so like, I've been so weirdly like connected, but also disconnected from like just religion.
Mm-hmm.
Like I fully believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
I fully believe that there's no way this is just random. It just doesn't make that. It's too perfect to be random. Also too terrible to be random. But I've always had this hard time really coming to like, this is the one true idea.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one true truth of like, this is what it is. And I don't know if we humans could ever get there until they get to the other side and see what happens, see what it is, or how they show up, or what's next. So we always have these conversations about right and wrong, and this God or their God, or this perception of that. And how are we really saying this is right?
Well, like I said, it's up to every person to evaluate based on their conscience and based on, I mean, look, the Bible is a record of prophecy, of revelations, and it has also been expounded upon by philosophers and theologians, just like Islam, just like Judaism, all these traditions, and people, they have a moral responsibility to evaluate those things, because you're right, everyone is imperfect. Everybody is flawed because of our human nature. We say that's human nature, we mean we have envy, we have desire, we have appetites, we're weak, we're mortal, we die. But we have it matters what we're pointed towards. And the question is the trajectory. What is the ideal we're striving for? And we'll always fall short of. For Christians, we're striving to get up on the cross, which means to die for the sake of another. Selflessness, which is love, which is rooted in a self-giving love, the love that God has for us, the love that we have to show to everyone else. I think that is the best idea. I think that's the best moral idea. Whereas Islam, you know, even to get off I don't want it to be a bash fest against Judaism. That's the subject of, you know, the war in Gaza and everything. But
Right.
Even something like Islam, they don't say Allah is their father. They don't say Allah is love. They say Islam means submission, which is different, right? Because Christianity says God the Father, God is love. They don't say that.
But isn't submission to God, to their God, whatever, you know, isn't that also a form of love?
They don't say it that way. They say that Allah does not need creation, that we are nothing compared to him, and that they say that we are Allah's slaves, is what the Muslims say.
But I when I hear submission, being able to submit, for example, in a relationship over something, obviously there's like big ideas, small ideas. Being able to submit into something is a form of love, in my opinion.
Well, and Christians, we submit to God also, but it is in a loving sense, in the sense that, you know, our God, for example, in the Christian theology, became incarnate in man. He became a man, and he walked with us, and he talked with us, and he knew us, and died for us because he loved us. Whereas Muslims, they actually believe we're idolaters. They think there's one God. The idea that Jesus would also be God, or that God would be a man, they say is a form of idolatry, because we're idolizing a man or a different God, a separate God away from God the Father, what Christians would call God the Father. Their version of God, compared to ours, is distant, impersonal. Our God came to earth to love us intimately, a self-giving love. Their God is distant, is removed from them. It's not intimate. He didn't come to die for them. He doesn't need them. He doesn't want to draw the people, the Muslims, up to him. It's the Muslims' job to submit to their God. So it's a subtle, maybe it seems like a subtle difference, but in principle, it's a very big difference. And I think the fruits are seen in how these different societies have progressed over the years. I mean, you know, there's this idea of the fruit of the poisonous tree.
Yeah.
The Christian civilization has given the world the laws of war, as one example that we talked about. It's given the world technology and medicine, and given the world, I think, a lot of good things. Whereas you look at some of these other traditions, I don't think it's given the world as much in terms of...
What about like the Chinese medicine, like that whole side of the world. There's a ton of stuff that it's given the world, I believe.
But you also have tens of millions of people killed by collectivism. You also have in Islam Sharia law. I don't think anyone would look at Sharia law as something that is like truly stirs our soul and is compelling to us.
Yeah, I guess there's like, is Sharia law in Dubai?
Yeah, they have it in the Emirates.
I know there's no crime out there. I went there, it was like, you could leave I think I left my phone somewhere, my watch somewhere, it sat there, no one touched it. I'm not saying it's like, this is the only way, but there are things that I remember when I was there, I was like, this is nice. Everyone was super nice to me. I don't know, maybe it's because of the internet, but there's no crime. I know that.
That's true.
Like but that's
because they're brutal. That's because they're brutality.
So maybe there's something there.
They stone people. They lash people. I agree with you, by the way.
I'm just saying there was something there that I was like, damn, this is nice. So I guess I'm just having this conversation because I'm just like, I'm so interested in religion. I'm so interested in the way that people connect themselves to God and into their purpose and what they need to do in their life. And it's just also interesting to me because I just go back to it all, and it's, it's written, or, there's prophets, but it's all of human translation. It's all of like, hey, to me, it feels like a giant game of like telephone of thousands of years where they're like, this is now how you have to be. And in a world that is so completely different than when it was written then with technology and all this stuff. And it's like, how do you really get it right? Do you think at some point, like, do you think it will ever just be peace? I don't think that exists. I don't think it will ever just be peace.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think a big part of my worldview is that we live on the other side of heaven. So any idea that things are going to be perfect here, and even in some sense, the way that like the language of left-wing people, they always talk in terms of this is unacceptable. This should not be this way. And it's like, okay, but we live in the world, and as long as we live in the world, there's going to be suffering. There's going to be greed. There's going to be all these things. They look at, for example, our leaders or our system, and they say, if it weren't for those greedy corporations, it's like, you're greedy, they're greedy, we're all greedy, we're all fallen, we're all sinful. And so the best that we can do, and to your point earlier, you said everybody is really doing the most with what they can. They're doing the best from their perspective in the moment. And what's incumbent on us is just to try to get to know God, is to try to know. I think we all have a moral obligation to know the truth and to know the moral truth and to fight for it. I think that's everybody's obligation. And yeah. I resent the kind of relativism that says it's all complicated, so to each their own. There's a certain form of abdication. You're kind of giving up your responsibility because there is a truth, there is a justice, and I think we should fight for it, even while recognizing that we're never going to have heaven on earth, Yeah,
I see. It's interesting you said, because I know something you talk about in relationship to our government and Jewish people being in power or having influence. I know you speak to a lot of it. You speak about Jewish supremacy. But at just moments ago, you sort of submitted unironically to the fact that like it's not going to be perfect. There is greed no matter who. But you seem to think that it's because they're Jewish that it exists at that level.
I would say that in particular when it comes to, because there's two questions. In Israel, I think that the reason they have no qualms about being brutal, there's something baked into the Jewish identity, which is why that is. As far as our system in America, why are Jewish people so influential? I think that has a lot to do with how they organize as a tribe. Because it's without a question, Jewish people are one of the most influential groups in America. And I don't think...
The highest IQ, too.
Some people say this, and some people say that's why, right? They say that they're influential in media, government, all these different things, and it's unignorable. And so the natural conclusion that people draw is it's inherent, that they're smarter, or it's cultural. They're educated. And those are two good, both of those things are true. Ashkenazi Jews do have a very high IQ, and they are extremely educated. And, I know that firsthand because I have a lot of Jewish friends, and they're some of the smartest people I know. Some of the smartest,
me too,
funniest, without a doubt. And, the stereotype is just true. This is not trying to be glib. They're very good at making money. They're hustlers. They're good salesmen. They're very clever. And I have no qualms about admitting that. But when you look at how much influence they have and how they acquired it, it cannot be attributed alone to their IQ or their education. I'll give you a perfect example. When you look at the high school standardized tests, I forget the name of it, but there's a high school test. This is an article that was on the UNS review. He wrote a very good article about this. It's called The Myth of American Meritocracy. And he says that when you look at some of these standardized tests that measure math, science, and language achievement, the top scores across the board, they're almost all Asian. Almost all Asian on math, science, less so on literature. And that's why it is Asians that are making up the majority of Ivy League admissions now, so much so that they have to artificially, they call that affirmative action. They have to decrease the amount of Asians they permit into Harvard and Yale.
Let other groups in.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet, Asians, although they're more numerous than Jews in America, Asians are 7%, Jews are 2%. Asians don't dominate media, Hollywood, finance, government. Jewish people do. And so you say that Jews are 2,000% overrepresented at the admissions in Columbia, but they're not 2,000% overrepresented in the high achieving scores of high school seniors. In other words, their influence is not commensurate with their achievement, with their IQ, with their educational attainment. And so you would say, how do you account for that disparity? Certainly you would expect that Jews, within Judaism, there'd be a lot of successful people. But out of all of the powerful hedge fund managers, you wouldn't expect that half of them would be Jewish.
It seems like they just went to they were smart enough to go to the right places.
I think you could say that. I think on the other hand, you'd say that they work as a team.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. That's what, in the sense when I say smart enough, like you said, this tribalism, this idea, like working together and being as a unit, is, in my opinion, a part of IQ, because IQ measures. There's tons of different types of IQs.
Right.
This is one of them where, working as a team, working as a unit community, I think they're just exceptional at it.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm getting at is like, why is that such a spoken problem for you?
Well, it's a problem in the first sense because they're the only ones that are allowed to. They can work as a team in our open system. So America is an open society where it's illegal to discriminate. It's illegal to do nepotism in some cases. But for Jewish people, they are allowed to do these things. And so you think about how are they able to sort of charge through the institutions over the last century? It's because everybody else was working as individuals. Some boomers won't even give their fortune to their kids when they die. They literally won't even give them an inheritance, whereas Jewish people are helping each other almost on a systemic level. And so I think in the first place, everybody needs to be playing by the same rules. Either everybody can help each other and everybody has this group identity, everybody's playing a team sport, or nobody is.
But that's an idea. That's an ideological thing, meaning like they decided that was their choice. It's also like, to this point, no one said that, white people or Christian people couldn't do that.
Are you sure?
I'm not. I can't say for a fact, but but what I'm saying is, if they were able to do it, and they did it, why don't other? Like you just said, some people don't even give their inheritance. That's their choice,
right?
Right. So in that sense, they could have made a different choice,
right? But I think there has been this in our society. We are indoctrinated with this mantra of we are colorblind. We are a melting pot. We're individuals. And, and here's a little test. If me as a white guy, if I got up and said, I'm going to start a whites only school. I'm going to start a whites only community center.
Yeah, I know where this is going. They're not.
Yeah,
like
you would get prosecuted for that,
I see what you're saying.
For the things that they do. And what's more, and so of course, there's this aspect of it. They're very tribal and that's unfair. On the other hand, they're also, and this is maybe the bigger problem, they're also do not have a chief loyalty to this country. These Jewish people that have so much power, because they're a diasporic people, what that means, they were banished from Palestine by the Roman Empire. They go into all these European countries. There's big Jewish populations in France, in England, in Germany, in America. They have this identity which is above their national identity. You and me were born in America. You're ethnically Italian. I'm ethnically Italian. But we don't pick up the phone and call our Italian friends in Germany, England, France, and Italy. We don't maybe necessarily have a strong connection to Italy. We don't speak Italian.
But see, like, is that the system's fault, or is that our choice?
In some sense, I don't even think it matters. It's just the fact that it is so. And because it is so, that the Jewish people have this.
I feel like it has to matter if it is so.
I think
because if now that I know you're Italian, what if you're just like, yo, I'm gonna call you up and we're working on this project. We find some more Italian. Like, that's essentially, like, there was no law saying you couldn't do that.
Right.
Right.
And I agree. There is no law. Well, depending on what we did, there might be laws governing that. But the reason why I say it doesn't matter is because it's suffice to say they do have influence. How they got it is maybe, let's say, for the sake of this conversation, less important. They do have this influence. They do have this intense tribalism. And they're loyal to people outside our country. They're loyal to another country, Israel. These two things, we don't even need any other questions, are inherently problematic. If people that are very powerful don't have the best interests of this country in mind, they shouldn't have power in this country, whether they're Chinese or Jewish or anything.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. When I think about the whole thing, I'm like, yeah, you could replace this name of this country with any other country, and most people would be like, what? And it has sort of been baked into America for it just to be okayed. From my perspective, I go, okay, what are they getting? What are we getting? And we always have this conversation around like, well, why are they always say they're our greatest ally. Why do we say that? And you know, a lot of the politicians are saying that it's very dumb. Like, this is why, like, Ted Cruz, which sounded crazy to me, because I'm like, if you replace this in any other country, you'd be like, why are they saying that? He joined the government to be Israel's greatest defender, right? He said this in an interview with Tucker Carlson recently. And it sounds interesting because you're like, well, why is it not about America if you're joining an American, you know, Congress or Senate, whatever it is? Now, in my mind, I go, you know, how we were talking earlier about you read something, they want you to react a certain way, but then what's really happening? Is it not also, and maybe you have better insight on this, but is it not also a benefit to America? It's almost as if like it's a proxy state of America that, you know, they have closer access to certain resources that we want as Americans or as America, right? Maybe not as Americans, because Americans, you know, are especially more than ever dominantly thinking America first, what's happening here, fix the homelessness, fix the borders, fix all this stuff, healthcare, all these issues that like people are sort of complaining about when it comes to why are we sending aid there or aid here? And why is it not here, right? And I have to think logically that, because I know there's, you know, all the conspiracies around, oh, it's because there's this blackmail thing and this Epstein thing, and we'll get into that. But a part of me also thinks, was it not willfully done because there is some interest or there's some sort of expansional idea of like, we're now getting more real estate, we're getting, you know, a safe haven in this region, and this is what America also wants. American government, maybe not necessarily American people. Isn't that not a reality?
Absolutely. And actually that's how it started. That's how the whole relationship started, is when you look at the foundation of the CIA, for example, it had its start in World War II, came from the OSS, and you had in Italy, America invades Italy. That's a big part of how we got into Europe. What's that?
What year was that?
I think it was 1942 when we took Italy. I'm not sure though,
right?
Off the top of my head, but we invade Italy, and a big source originally of our intelligence network, which was just being started at that time, is many of the Jewish refugees who were fleeing Germany and fleeing all the other countries that Germany had invaded. So we go to Italy, and James Angleton, who became a big guy at the CIA later on, he was in Italy running our intelligence network. How do we get intelligence about all the different countries of Europe, the different Jewish refugees that live there, that were fleeing, and many of them ultimately wound up fleeing to Palestine. So they were kind of critical to our intelligence network. Then the Cold War starts, and you go from fighting the Nazis in Germany to fighting the Soviets in Russia. Problem is, we don't know anything that's going on in Russia because the Iron Curtain descends. They don't let anybody out. They start building the Berlin Wall. And so in the early days of the CIA, they say, how do we figure out what's happening in the Warsaw Pact countries? How do we figure out what's happening in the Soviet Union? Well, there was a huge emigration of Jews leaving Russia. So we said, how do we learn what's happening in Russia? Talk to the Jews, then move to Israel. And so that was a big source for intelligence. Like, for example, when Nikita Khrushchev, he was the successor to Joseph Stalin, he gave a very famous speech in 56 called the Secret Speech, where he criticized Joseph Stalin. We learned about it through a Jewish refugee who went to Israel. And we got that source because the CIA was working with Israeli intelligence. But here's the trick. We were trading. So we got those secrets from the Jews that fled Russia in exchange for our secrets. And one of the things that we learned in the JFK files that came out this year, or at least it was a hint, is that maybe James Angleton gave our nuclear secrets in exchange for intelligence from these Jewish immigrants that left Russia and went to Israel. Now, at that time, you could, as you said, you could argue there was a national interest. We needed to learn about the Soviet Union. We needed that intelligence. We needed to fight communism. But 50 years later, these are the unintended consequences of foreign policy. Now Israel has a nuclear arsenal, and that presents a lot of challenges for us. So I guess part of the problem is that these Jewish people are playing a very long game. They're playing a very long game, and they have influence in our country, and they run their country. They also have influence in other countries too. Whereas Americans, because we're living in an open society, we don't really play a long game. We have elections every year. We don't have a kind of tribal affinity. You could say we're very disorganized, very short-term oriented. And I think that makes us vulnerable. I think that makes us less solid. So you could say Israel's a tiny fledgling country with little weapons compared to us. But who's more powerful? A very open, short-term minded country without any long-term plans, without cohesion, without a kind of national plan, or a country that is extremely tight-knit, extremely organized, has influence in many capitals, is spread out and dispersed, is pursuing a 100-year plan. In the arc of history, it bends towards the organized country, the long-term country, as opposed to ours. So my solution is, let's be like Israel. Let's be a more closed society. Let's be a more organized society.
I hear it. So when I think about it, though, and I just use my own personal experiences. This is life. I'm not talking about government, anything. But who I am closest with to in my life are people who have been loyal to me. Mm-hmm. So if I think back on this conversation that we're having about, the US getting intel, giving something to get something, there seems to be at that time a benefit both ways, like a massive benefit. Otherwise it probably wouldn't have gone that way. Right. So then you think of loyalty, right? So there is some sort of sense of innate loyalty for the United States to be loyal to Israel, whether or not right now today they're giving as much as they gave us then, as we gave them, as we're giving them now, right? So, because I can think of my life, I'm like, okay, the people that I will still ride for, I'll still be there for, who have been there for me no matter what, are the people who've been loyal to me, not the people who were disloyal to me. So that's what I'm saying, like, because I see a lot of your messaging and it's about America first, and I get it, and a lot of I think young people also are like, yeah, like let's stop, which I agree with to an extent. Let's stop giving all of our shit away. Let's stop giving our money away. Let's put it here. Let's fix all the problems here, right? Let's be able to buy fucking homes. Let's be able to do things like we should be able to do at this point, given the economical point of this world where we're living in the richest time and everyone's so fucking rich, but people can't buy a home, right? But there is this like loyalty maybe that they have because of those moments. So who's to say when that loyalty has to die?
I would say that it's really a question of who you're loyal to. And when you look at Israel, there has been this relationship for many years, and nominally we're giving to get, in the sense that in name we're getting something. But when you look at what we get, it's dubious how much they really benefit us. Like even during the Cold War, there were many analysts that said during that time that the intelligence they gave us was useless. And not only was it useless, it was counterproductive because they had their own agenda. And we thought that we were kind of getting a bulwark against communism, and they were our aircraft carrier, is what Joe Biden and AIPAC have said. In reality, they were giving us a lot of misleading information to steer us so that, for example, we would take a tougher stance towards Egypt or towards their adversaries or even towards the Soviet Union. And so we have a relationship. Ostensibly, we're trading things, but it almost goes back to what is really their objective as a nation. If they are truly distinct from us, we're Christian and European, they're Jewish, ethnically and religiously. When they have this long-term goal, they have this ideology where they're deeply suspicious of us, distrusting of us because of the legacy of anti-Semitism. Are they going to be a long-term partner? Do they have our best interests in mind? And I would say that we must regard them with a mutual suspicion. In the same way that they distrust us, we should distrust them. And I'll give you an example, which is a little frightening. In 2024, Israel goes to war against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and they detonate the pagers. Secretly, a long time ago, they had used shell corporations and all kinds of corporate obscurity to create these pager and radio devices for Hezbollah. Hezbollah was buying them from Israel, their mortal enemy. And Israel planted remote-controlled explosive devices inside the pagers. And the entire time, for years, Israel was spying on the communications on the devices, and then, when necessary, hit a trigger and detonated all of them simultaneously. And it blew up people's legs, their heads. Wherever they had the pager, it detonated. Now, you consider that in America, many of our tech companies are deeply involved with Israel. Much of our defense procurement and our tech procurement, you have people like Alex Karp, people like Sean McGuire that are deeply loyal to Israel, that are controlling for commercial and military purposes our tech devices.
Is this the Palantir stuff?
It's part of it.
Okay.
Palantir's only a part of it. Now you consider, if they can listen in on Hezbollah's pagers and then blow them up, you think they don't have an insurance policy on us? Now, it's not to say, I'm sure there's not a bomb in my iPhone right now, but would you trust them to make your iPhone?
Steve Jobs would never.
Steve Jobs would never, but Sean McGuire.
But they're made in China, though, no?
Well, and look at who Israel's getting into bed with. They're getting into all these supply chains. They're getting into Taiwan. They're getting into Japan, South Korea, where this stuff is made. And so you never know where they're made, because Hezbollah, they didn't know where their pagers were made.
Mine just says made in China when it came in the box.
And maybe it is. Yeah. And maybe it isn't. But that's the kind of thing where it's like, I'm trying to impress upon people. It's not even like, oh, we have pagers in our bombs. It's not even
bombs in our pagers.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is to say, they are a country, we're a country. They have a distinct national interest. They're threatened by us, and we should be threatened by them. Because in the game of geopolitics, it's the big knife fight. Everybody's fighting everybody else all the time. And I don't, given the record of how they've treated other countries in particular and how they've treated us, they've perpetrated false flags against Americans. They've attacked us.
Yeah, one of my biggest things, like, without getting into too many of like the false flag attacks, I mean, there's a ton of stuff to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could talk about this shit for the whole day.
Yeah, it's a huge topic.
But one of the things that I can't wrap my mind around, if I'm the Israeli government and in this conversation about Gaza specifically in the war right now, are third-party journalists allowed to be in document what's happening in Gaza? And they straight up just say on Google, no, they're like, it's super strict. They don't allow them unless it's like, military is like sort of with them, or there's like censorship. Mm-hmm. It's like just they're willfully saying it. Mm-hmm. And so for me, one of the biggest like red flags of the whole thing, and I watched the interview with Netanyahu, obviously, and the Nelk Boys, they did their podcast, and I saw that they spoke to you afterwards. Mm-hmm. But they're asking this guy about what's happening, and at sort of every corner or every turn, it's Hamas. Hamas is doing this. This is what's happening, right? They're killing people. They're doing this. They're shooting women. Whatever it is. In Iran, same thing. He's saying, but there's this massive red flag of like, well, if it is exactly what someone says it is, mm-hmm. then why are certain third-party publications not allowed to go and report?
In Israel. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Why are they not allowed to report on that? Because they're going to find out the truth. And
so that's, I guess for me, and this is the thing, man, like, it's not, I can't say about anyone's religion belief or like right to a land or no right to a land or whatever it is. But I can say as a logical thinking human that if we're not allowed, a third party to go check, hey, what's happening over there? Can we write about it? Can we shoot some video? Can we report on it? It's so hard to make the conclusion that something bad isn't happening or something wrong isn't happening with that being true.
Right.
And so like, I don't have to, it's not about Jewish people. It's not about, a religion. And I just like, I can't but help see that and know that and see that reported. You can just Google it and you go, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And those are the things that catch me up on this whole conversation that I'm just like, it's hard to look away.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to see that, okay, something here is maybe a little bit amiss.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of frustrating. Like, I'll give you another example. I watched I didn't watch the whole podcast, saw a clip with Joaquin Phoenix talking to Theo Vaughn about, Theo Vaughn came out and said, basically, I don't know so much about this, but I know it feels wrong what's happening there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know how to talk about this. And he got a lot of love. He got a lot of hate, obviously. But then he had Joaquin Phoenix come on, who is a massive A-list celebrity. And he essentially told Theo Vaughn, I came on your podcast because I saw what you said. And he's kind of dancing around saying that it's bad, but still saying that, like, for a lot of people, we feel like we can't talk about this. And that's another example of like, I can't help but get around the idea that if we have to avoid conversation around something because of the fear of, if you say otherwise, then you just don't like Jewish people.
Right.
Like I've even avoided conversations like this for so long because I'm like, I don't want someone to say something about me that's not true. Like I don't dislike anyone.
Right.
Like I don't dislike black people, Jewish people, Asian. I don't give a like I genuinely don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely care about right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't have this open view of something, then I can't logically go, it's just right.
Right.
My brain goes, it feels wrong no matter what you say about it, Hamas, or if the terror, and they're doing all this stuff. And I'm sure there's things that are terrible that's happened to Israeli people and, October 7th and all these things. But if everything after the fact, because I was reading further on this, you can't go, it was after October 7th, they didn't allow this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, it just feels bad. And then you see like a big prominent figure in Hollywood say that, I can't really, we can't really talk about this. Is like that, in my opinion, that's the overarching thing that like, that's why there's this massive uproar, which is something also interesting. I saw recently, Charlie Kirk came out and did this whole like sort of think group with a bunch of, Gen Zers, like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you guys feel about Israel? And what's your perception of Israel? And this, and they're all saying sort of the stuff we're talking about now, as far as like, let's keep the money here. Let's keep the focus on America. And even him, and even, I don't know how many weeks ago, Tucker Carlson talking about it. And it's just like this fear of, if you just said anything that was against this idea, or even just question what's happening, that you're a bad person and you don't like Jewish people. And that just feels wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't have skin in the game. It just feels wrong.
Right.
And that's the frustrating part of this whole conversation about just what's exactly happening and why it's happening and who's benefiting from it or whatever. Because they're real people getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
There's kids, there's women. Like you could Google how many, it's 20,000, this many people, women and children. And you're just like, you can't just go, it's just because of them every time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's a tough thing to talk about. I know like it pisses a lot of people off, but I guess the only sort of silver lining here is that it feels like we're getting to a point where we can actually just say, hey, this is wrong. Like likely back when the COVID thing was a thing, and it was like, you can't say that, and you can't talk about ivermectin, and it's a horse dewormer, and Joe Rogan's getting smeared. And then years later, they're like, well, it's actually won a Nobel Prize and been the use in humans forever. And like, it actually did really help against this. And it's hard to believe, it's hard to have trust in, these governments and our government, right? Where I've experienced, I mean, personally, I had my gym open during COVID. I'm going to court. I got to court 8 times, and I'm keeping my gym open here in California down the street. And they're like, I'm going there. I'm like, give me a reason why this is different than and this is a completely separate, this isn't about someone dying. This is not even as important. I mean, COVID was about people dying. That was, the problem with like, the at-risk people who were having problems. There were people passing from that, right? I'm not to say that that wasn't a problem in any sense, but the idea that like they so vehemently wanted you to just agree with what they wanted you to believe just feels wrong. Like that feels like the least American thing, period. Like America was founded because they were trying to leave Britain and be like, we want sovereignty. We want to be able to orchestrate how we want to orchestrate without all these taxes, or you taking us this for that. And like, that's how it was founded. And it's almost like history, get back to the point of control and power, and it happens all over again.
Right.
And I think that's why we're here. In a lot of ways, it seems like just unavoidable, but it's fucking sad.
Yeah, it is. Well, and you hit the nail on the head. It is an issue of sovereignty. I'm glad you connected it that way, because that is the operative word, is Americans want to feel in control. And we feel like when we see what's happening in Israel, what is also deeply disturbing about it is we're paying for it. Those are our missiles. That's our military supplies. And our government is ostensibly opposing it. Joe Biden.
But I'm sorry, I interrupted. The thing that really fucks me up, and I'll let you continue. I apologize. Is, we talk about our money and it's going. I can't also get over the fact that it's for profit. It's for these giant conglomerate companies, because we pay the money, we give the money, but it's so they can buy the stuff from us, so that someone here who is a shareholder of whatever company that makes bombs or makes plane parts, or, this military industrial complex, right, makes money. And so it's because, correct me if I'm wrong, but the money just doesn't go directly to Israel. Like, it goes to them to pay for us to make stuff.
Most of it does, yeah.
That's where most of it goes. So it's like, it's all, maybe it's like a nihilist or just cynical, but it's like, it's all for money. Like, at the end of the day, like, that's where it's like, it's all guised in like, religious beliefs or, who has this land versus who doesn't have this land. But then it all comes back to money in that person's pocket. Just like COVID was for the big pharma. Like, oh, this is free, but it's not free because we took all your tax dollars and paid Pfizer. And it's like, I can't get over like, damn, this just feels so bad. And I think a lot of people feel this way. It's like, what do we even do?
Right.
How do we really ever change this? Because it's not like you're going to take these companies. I mean, America is like government, but also corporate. It's like, and it's just this giant cycle of forever. Let's print money. Our money that we actually earn is worth less. And then the money that they take from us, they also give here. Then it goes back to those companies. And it's just a giant cycle of like, do we ever actually really get out of this?
I don't know. I mean, that is really the question on everybody's minds. And I think part of the frustration with Trump is that, or at least for me, I thought that we would vote for Trump and he would be able to get us out of the matrix. He would kind of get in between that process, because that was his whole appeal, is he said the reason that things are not working for Americans is because the politicians are being bribed. They're all talk, no action, and that's because they're controlled by donors and special interests. The solution was, I will run as an outsider. I will self-fund my campaign. I won't take PAC money or special interest money, and that will enable me to deliver the real victories. I could break the corruption. But after 12 years, I mean, from 16 to 29, when he leaves office, do you really see a lot of that? I mean, we got this bill. It's a corporate tax cut by cutting Medicaid. It's more aid for Israel and Ukraine, actually. It's, in the end, going to be more H-1B visas, more H-1A visas. And so you look at a guy like Trump and say, especially for me, my entire adult life, I've been fighting this battle in a way on behalf of Trump. That January 6th, I campaigned in 16. And in the end, you say, what was it all for? He was the most radical option at one time, the outsider, the burn it to the ground guy. And now he seems to have delivered everybody back into the political system.
I hear you. And the thing that's frustrating, like, it seems like the one issue that really did change, though, that is like, I don't want to say it's not as important. It's important to a lot of people. Like, the one thing that really changed was the maybe the perception or like the okaying of this whole, I mean, it's just, I guess it sounds kind of dumb, but it was just like the women in fucking men's sport, or the men in women's sports. That was a piece of it, but that was negligible to like the rest of it. And the thing that I couldn't get over was like this whole, like, he's doing interviews and all these people are doing, he's on Joe Rogan. He's talking about releasing these files, the Epstein stuff. And he's like kind of campaigning on that. I don't know if you remember that.
Yep.
And like you said, yeah, like let's drain the swamp and all these things. And then you get in there and then I couldn't believe how this Epstein thing was handled. Like it went from, also the Ukraine thing, I'm going to end the war as soon as I'm in office, I'll end the war. And now it's like, yeah, we just recently gave more money again. Because they need it. I don't know. I saw some sort of press interview where he's saying like, they need it. They really need it. We're sending more money. And then the Epstein thing, yeah, I'll release that. Like, some people, it's going to affect a bunch of people. And, I forget his exact wording, but like, I'm going to come out and I'm going to release that. And then it was like, yeah, there's nothing there. If Cash Patel comes out on Joe Rogan, yeah, like if I had it, I would just give it. And then you got Pam Bondi saying, yeah, I have it on my desk, thousands of hours of this. Then you have a woman in prison for 25 years, I believe, the Ghislaine Maxwell lady, Ghislaine Maxwell, excuse me, for this crime in relationship to Epstein. And if there's a crime, then there has to have been perpetrators, because there were victims who they were paid out, even like a settlement from like Chase or JP Morgan, whatever it was, because he was like using their bank account. So they paid out to the victims. I don't know exactly the details of that, but I know that happened. And so if you're paid out victims, that means the victims had to have said, well, that's the person, but then we don't get any of it. And then they act like it wasn't there. And then it's a hoax, a Democratic hoax. And then they come back and they go, okay, now we're getting them. And now we're talking to Ghislaine Maxwell right now. And it just feels wrong. Like there's no other way to put it. And right. It's frustrating to me because like the same thing, I hear it and I believed it. And I'm like, yeah, this is the direction we're going in is let's get rid of this shit. Like, let's really be about America. Let's not let it be about all this other stuff. And let's get these people who are just collecting money and feeling line in their pockets, get them out. And it's like, it's like, all right, now let's talk about Obama. And I'm just like, dude, I can't follow it. And it's frustrating to me, like genuinely, because you want it. You just want it to be better. And then you just want, like, it should be the government, which is what it would stand for originally, for the people, not for the corporations, not for more money, not for, they buy this so that he gets some money there because they said they would buy it from them. And they're like, cool, hands. Oh, here's a million here. It's like, it just feels fucked, dude.
Yeah, well, it stinks. The whole thing stinks. I mean, and the best part is these conservatives, they were on this for 6 years. From 2019 when Jeffrey Epstein killed himself until now. Even Cash Patel, Dan Bongino, who are at the FBI, Don Jr., J.D. Vance, they all said for 5 years, I wonder why they won't release those files. It's because of who's in them. They were for years saying that there was something in them. The government wouldn't release it because it would damn everybody who's involved, or many of these elite people. The second they get in, they start obfuscating and they start to say, well, we did a phase 1 release. Remember, they put those binders out for what a joke that was. Then they say, well, we'll put them out on Friday. We'll put them out next week. Well, we'll put them out eventually. And then, I mean, the way they handled it a few weeks ago, even Trump's biggest supporters, they're still on his side, but they say how that was handled. It's almost boggles the mind how they did it so poorly. They put out this memo from the DOJ, and they effectively denied the basis of the whole thing. They say there is no list, and not only is there no client list, but he never engaged in blackmail at all. Really? Jeffrey Epstein never engaged in blackmail? Why did he have microphones and cameras all over his sex island then?
And that's like confirmed.
Yes, there's pictures of it.
Yeah, dude, it just, none of it feels good, man. I read it and I'm like, it really feels like we live in a Black Mirror episode. And it's just like, it's almost like, it's starting to become obvious to like the smoke screen or the setup of, we're dealing with Iran now, or it's Obama's a guy now, a bad guy. And not that I know that he was ever to be a good guy. But it's just like, fuck, this is really tough. It's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, well, it's totally on the nose. I mean, it's the most prolific child trafficker in U.S. political history. Trump is covering it up, which is such a betrayal because that, to me, that's the Black Mirror. Because if Kamala Harris was doing this, you'd say, oh, of course. Like, we expect that from the Democrats. You expect that from, if Joe Biden did it, you'd say, it wasn't even Joe Biden. It was his handlers. He's not even the president. Like, nothing would surprise you. But when Trump does it, that's the trip. Because it's like, you thought this whole movement was the furthest right thing. This was our get out of this option. And if he's covering it up, then you say, what is real and what is fake? This is a whole matrix. And that's obviously why he's covering it up, because he's in it.
Yeah, the whole thing, man, is just, it's tough because this like, you can't, I just always felt this way about the government, that it didn't matter. It didn't matter red or blue.
Right.
Like, that's why I've always just been sort of somewhat disconnected from it, slightly connected to it, wanting it to be better, because it just always felt like, you know, the same body, just different hands. One's red, one blue. And then this one, they liked a little, they realized the public liked this one a little bit more, so they went with it. And then it just seemed like that was the way to, you know, coerce people to still believe in the system, the establishment. With the Epstein stuff, it's super interesting because there's just too much leading to it. Like, this guy he's like damn near a billionaire. I don't know, $600 billion he's worth. I guess his bank account's still moving money. It's like, how did this guy create all this wealth? There's so many questions around how did this come to be like, oh, the guy just became a half a billionaire, you know, maybe a billionaire in some cases, like just like randomly. And we know that he's a child sex trafficker. So it's like this giant issue on a massive scale. Like, that's easily the worst thing in the world, is being someone that takes advantage of kids. Like, you can't say that that's not the worst thing ever. Cause like, there's so much innocence, right? And an adult has so much wherewithal to know what's right and wrong, or should. So you can't look away from it. And I think that's the thing that they ran into. Like, no one's going to look away from this. And then when you hear the, like, why are we still talking about it, stuff that Trump said, or you see these people, politicians on the internet being like, why are we still, you know, there's other things to worry about, like the border and like there's the trafficking there. It's like, yeah, it's true, but those things can all be true, but that doesn't make this not still a massive issue that needs to be understood, that needs to be sorted out, that needs to be fixed.
Right.
Like, obviously you can't go back and undo what has happened to these children or to these people that are now adults. But to let it just go and it just be like, that was never a thing, is very scary. It's very scary. And I don't know. It's like, what do? You can't, because here's the fucked up thing. It seems they're going to release something, right? And now at this point, you're like, what's real?
Right.
Because you can release anything. And that's the weird part. But then my brain also goes, well, why didn't they just do it earlier then?
Yeah.
Why didn't they just release what it was? Maybe they didn't think that people would hold on to it as much because they, you know, maybe the Iran thing was, okay, they would have focused on this, but no, everyone was still like, what about that? But it's just like now the trust in the government is just like completely at an all-time low. Whether it's blue or red, it doesn't matter, because the way this was handled was so absurd. And now you could release something, and the same people who were like, release it, we need it, are probably just going to be like, but that's probably not true.
Right. Well, because of this whole process, you can't, because they put out a memo that said there's nothing else. And when you say it stinks because they're clearly lying. They said there's something, they said there's nothing. And now if they come forward 2 weeks and say, oh, we found something. Okay, so what happened to the DOJ memo where they said there's no other files? They said the only thing that's left is child. There are no other files. There's nothing else. It's just graphic images of children. And people said, well, are there adults in those videos or pictures? They said, no, it's just like commercial pornography. It's just explicit material. Now they're going to say, oh, actually, we found some files that we're going to release. We're asking for testimony. So you say, what happened then a few weeks ago? I thought there was nothing. And this is being prodded along, ironically, by the media. It's the New York Times. It's the Wall Street Journal. They reported the other day, Trump is sitting on 100,000 files right now, 100,000 Jeffrey Epstein files, when they said there were none. So now they're going to go to Ghislaine Maxwell. They're giving her this limited immunity to say, if you testify, we're not going to prosecute you on the basis. But obviously, she has every incentive to lie to get a presidential pardon.
Yeah.
And they have every incentive to get her to lie. Tell us something that we can use and we'll pardon you. She says, I'll tell you what you want to hear as long as I get my freedom. And it's just like I said this on my show, as someone who was a big Trump supporter, I didn't vote for him in 24. This is like a fundamental betrayal. Because you know what this reminds me of? Pizzagate. This is identical to Pizzagate. And many people voted for Trump in 16 because of that kind of corruption. We identified Hillary Clinton. She was synonymous or emblematic of that level of corruption. Like you said, the sickest shit, which is kids, compounded by using it for blackmail for a foreign intelligence service. We voted for Trump largely as a middle finger to that brazen corruption and the cover-ups and lies and the sordid shit they did. And now to see Trump effectively do something identical to that, which is where you had Comet Ping Pong, now you have Epstein's Island. Where you had James Alefantis, now you got Jeffrey Epstein. In the same way they covered it up then with these cryptic messages about pizza and hot dogs, now you got this stuff now with Trump's birthday message to Epstein. Real or not, there's a lot of weird stuff, a lot of weird communications between them. And you say, like you said, if Trump is part of it, then where's up and where's down? If Trump is a part of the matrix, if he's part of some kind of pedophile ring or covering up for it, how do you get out of it? And I agree with you. I think that the answer is it can't be red or blue. Voting Republican and Democrat, one hand washes the other. It's obvious. That's why I didn't vote in this election. And so you really need someone radical to step up that is maybe not even necessarily radically right or radically left, but is just going to end the corruption for the country. And you could say maybe there's a compromise, give us health care and close the border. But somebody needs to step up that says, I'm just not a part of this sick shit, because I'm with you. I can't stand it anymore.
Do you think there's even a possibility for that? Because there's so many nuances and there's so many people who will go, oh, well, this is happening this way for this long game of like, he has a plan, or do you think it's like going to be someone like Elon Musk? I know he introduced the American Party. Do you think it's something like that would be able to actually take hold? Because there's so much power already that my concern with government has always been like, for example, at times I'm like, man, I kind of want to run. I kind of want to be a part of this somehow. Like, I don't know if it's city and mayor, like something in LA, something local for myself. Mm-hmm. But then I'm like, at what point do you go where they're like, hey man, you're doing great, but check this out.
Right.
Like, at what point does it not just become the same history, the same cycle where it's like, yeah, that was the guy, like we all believe that Trump was that guy. Because I genuinely did. I genuinely, and a part of me still wants to believe that like there is that ability to fix it. And I think it can be fixed. It's like, but is there enough want or need for it to actually be fixed from those people when they're already there or getting close to that position when they, the checkbook comes out and they're like, yo, maybe think about this.
Right.
And that's the weirdest thing I think about our government. It's just the whole lobbying, all these things. It's just like, it just makes it feel corporate. It just makes it feel like it's not for people anymore.
Yeah.
It's for, private interests.
It is. Whether it's right or left, it's all for the private interests. And I don't know what the answer is. I think that my kind of goal politically has always just been to shake things up. I did vote for Trump in 16. I voted for him in 20. But I also supported Andrew Yang in 2019. And I supported Ye. I supported Kanye West in 2024.
Yeah, we got to talk about that a little bit.
In 2022. But I'm in favor of anything that shakes things up, anything where people start to think, I don't have to vote Republican. I don't have to vote for the same thing. And you just hope that between some of these maybe emerging technologies like social media and crypto and other things, and then maybe if there's any kind of calamity in the future, like a recession or some unknowable crisis, you hope that the right person at the right moment is going to be able to step up and take leadership. Because that's all that's missing. Trump winning this election in a landslide shows that people are tired. People wanted him to be what we thought he was, or what some still think that he is.
Right.
the support is there. All that is needed is the leadership to provide the language, to express the outrage of the people, the will of the people, and who has kind of Trump's strength and tenacity and boldness, but isn't willing to compromise or doesn't maybe have that baggage. And, you know, that's going to be one person, one special person.
Yeah, but that's the question is like, that's that person until it's not.
Right.
In my head, it's like, that's the person until, you know, the powers that already existing are like, well, check this out. That's the whole point to me is like, I don't know, like that amount of pressure or that amount of like idea of freedom now with whatever you can do in that circumstance. That's where it just gets scary. It just seems like a setup to fail. But the Ye thing's interesting because like or even the Elon Musk stuff, the American Party is like, it then just weakens, you know, all the other sort of, not even sort of, it weakens all the other parties essentially. And that's the whole fear around like this emergence of something new.
Right.
But yeah, I think there is something that needs to, I know there is something that needs to, and I think everyone feels the same way.
Yeah.
I do truly. But the stuff with Ye, like, I think you've spoken about this stuff before, but how did you originally get in contact with Ye?
So he tweeted the DEF CON thing. So he went on Tucker Carlson in like October 22, and he was talking about Jared Kushner and Israel and everything. And everybody's ears kind of perked up because they said, oh, it's getting a little political. Then I think about a week later, he tweeted DEF CON 3 on the Jews, he said, and they invented cancel culture and he got canceled. And I heard through the grapevine that he was talking to Alex Jones, who's a friend of mine. But Alex Jones, his producer, is not my biggest fan, but I knew she had his number. And so I got in touch with her through a couple of other people. I got his number. And I went out there with Milo and with John Miller and a couple people. That was back in 22. We came out to LA, and the idea was he wanted to run for president. So we were supposed to put together we were going to wind down his 2020 campaign and figure out if he could run in 2024 for the presidency. And we were there for about a week, and not even. I think we were there for a few days. And he had a pre-planned visit with Trump. That was already on the schedule. And I don't know what the basis for that was, but we got there, I think, on a Thursday, the week before Thanksgiving. And he told us, yeah, I got this meeting with Trump on Tuesday. And by Monday night, he said, I want you to go with me. I want you to go with me to the dinner. And we went, and Ye asked Trump to be his vice president in his presidential run, which is hilarious. Yeah.
You were there.
I was
there.
That
was the first time you met Trump.
Yes.
What was that interaction like?
It was crazy. I mean, you know, because they're both my heroes. I was always a fan of Ye for as long as I've been a fan of Trump. So those are my two like icons. It's like them and Sam Hyde, actually, who you had on the show.
Yeah, Sam's crazy.
Yeah, he's the best. So he's always a hero of mine as well. So it's like these two guys together was blowing my mind. And what's funny about it is that Ye is actually he's a little bit shy, actually.
Yeah.
I could tell that he was a little, and if you watch him on some of the talk shows and spending enough time with him, you could see that he was a little bit apprehensive. He was a little anxious because he loves Trump and he respects him deeply. So he's a little quiet at first. It was actually very awkward because he wasn't talking a whole lot. And so Trump was trying to start a conversation with him. And what's really funny is Trump, he loves his iPad. He's like a big iPad kid. And he controls the music at Mar-a-Lago from the iPad.
That's sick.
He loves music. And so
I know.
He's like the DJ at that Mar-a-Lago. So his way to connect with Ye was he goes, you take the iPad, you know, why don't you pick one of your songs? That was how he was going to connect. And so Ye said, okay. So he spent about 10 minutes finding a song. And for the Kanye fans, he put on Say You Will from 808s and Heartbreaks. It's sort of an unexpected song. But then Trump starts talking about the opportunity zones for black people. He's trying to connect with them as like a black voter. I'm like, we're way past that. I'm like, dude, we're watching Triumph of the Will. This guy's like a full-fledged anti-Semite. You're trying to connect with him like he's a black voter, telling him about opportunity zones and the Platinum Plan. I said, we're a little past that. But so he's trying to make conversation. It's not working. He starts talking to me a little bit. We're rapping with each other because I know everything about Trump. And then it was a pretty normal dinner. It was Thanksgiving dinner. We had turkey and stuffing and mashed potatoes. And so it's a very strange situation. But then, and this was the story of the dinner, before we arrived at Mar-a-Lago, this girl who was with us, Karen Giorno, she was getting Ye some like intel about how to deal with Trump, like how to play this. And so there was this lawyer whose name was Nick, and he sent all this information to Ye about how we're going to deal with Trump. And it said, if we eat in the dining room, that means this. If we eat in the patio, he wants to show you off. If he says this, it was just like this like play-by-play. How do we handle Trump?
Interesting.
And so we're pulling up to the dinner, and we have all this intel. And Ye said, what do you think about this? And I said, I don't know. Send it to me. So he forwards it to me, to my phone. Well, it turns out he accidentally forwarded it to a lawyer that Trump uses as well, whose name is also Nick.
Oh, my God.
So he tried to send it to me. I never got the text. I was like, that's weird. I didn't get it. We said, oh, well, we walk in. He accidentally sent all this intel to a lawyer that Trump actually uses. So in the middle of the dinner, Trump gets a phone call. He goes, just 1 second. It was this guy. It was this lawyer. And the guy says like, hey, Trump, this is a hit job. They are here to take you out. Like they sent me this intel by accident. They must have told them that this was a setup. So Trump hangs up the phone and his demeanor instantly changes.
Holy shit.
And he starts, and my right hand of God, he immediately starts dropping the F-bomb. Motherfucking this and that, just like, I've never seen him that angry.
Damn,
furious. But it was also very subtle. He starts telling Ye, because the idea was Ye was going to run for president and was going to ask Trump to be his VP. So Trump starts telling these stories about all the black people that he helped that betrayed him. That was the subtext.
Shit.
So he says, I freed this rapper in China. The basketball player.
Brittany Griner?
No, LeVar Ball.
He was in China?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he got like arrested or something. It was like an international incident.
Okay.
And so Trump was telling the story about how he freed this guy. And he says, so this basketball player, he's on the tarmac, he said, and the Chinese soldier slapped him across the face, the basketball player, and said, that's for disrespecting President Trump. That was the first story. The second story was about the rapper in, I think it was Norway or Sweden. I forget who. I think it was A$AP Rocky.
Yeah.
Got arrested up there. And he says, and I called up the president of Sweden, and I said, listen, you you better release him right now. And the moral of the story was these were all ingrates. These are all black celebrities that he helped that betrayed him. And then he goes to Ye, and I hosted your wife, Kim Kardashian, and I released these or commuted the sentence of these people on her behalf.
Yeah.
He goes, and she is a disgusting human being, he said. Yeah.
Dude, he's savage, bro.
Yes.
Fuck.
He goes, and she's such a disgusting, he goes, and you could tell her I said that. I want you to tell her. Tell her I said that. She's a disgusting human being. And I was sitting there like, whoa, I'm just like a guest.
What was Ye's reaction?
He had the same reaction that I did. He was totally taken aback by it, but he goes, that's still my wife. He goes, that's my wife you're talking about. And so it's very tense. And then then Trump was like kicking us out, basically.
Yeah.
He said, your airport is right across the street. I think it's time for you to go.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And Karen is like kicking him under the table saying, remember to ask him what you came here to ask him. And Ye goes, oh yeah, will you be my vice president? And Trump loses his mind. And he goes, you can win at a lot of things, but you'll never win at this. He goes, you could be a celebrity, you're talented. He goes, but you'll never win at this. You better not run. Lost his mind. He had his arms folded like a mobster. I thought he was going to start swinging. Like
No.
that's how aggressive his demeanor was. Like straight up like a gangster, like Tony Soprano.
That.
I do too. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, that's...
And even went to me. He goes, you're a smart guy. Tell him he can't win. He can never win. You tell him now. He can never win. I know you work for him, but he can't win. And I was just frozen. I was like, I I don't know. Maybe he can win.
Holy shit, dude.
Yeah, it was nuts. And so then we got kicked out. These other people wanted a picture with Trump and Ye. Trump refused to take a picture.
Oh, he's a savage.
Yeah, it was ugly. But
it didn't go too well, huh?
No.
Man. Yeah, I gotta respect that. I respect that.
It was baller. He's a gangster, man.
So your relationship with Ye now, like he brings you in as what? Like a political sort of like just input?
Yeah, basically. I mean, so I've talked to him on and off over the years, and I think he respects my opinion on these things because I'm one of the only people that's as canceled as him.
Yeah.
So he brings me in to talk about politics or give him some advice on things.
He came recently back and was like, yo, I'm not against the Jews anymore, not not anti-Semitic. I apologize, love for everyone. What's your opinion on that?
It's sincere. I mean, because he really is of two minds in the sense that he is not a hateful person at all. Like, he has Jewish employees and he really loves everybody. Like, genuinely, he's a good man, but he's getting screwed over. He can't play stadiums. He has a lot of trouble doing merch, doing even album releases. These estates, they won't clear the samples for his songs. So everything he does, they are still messing with him, whether it's the music, the fashion, the shows. And so I think he's kind of on this thing where he wants to move on. His true passion is architecture. He wants to build a smart city. He wants to build houses, and he wants to get the money to do that. But every time he tries to do anything, anti-Semite, you need to apologize. And you know him, he doesn't want to apologize. He's not wrong, at least on some of his complaints. He's apologized for how he's gone about it in one way or another. People he's hurt their feelings. So he's trying to move forward, but they won't let him move forward unless he apologizes. So he tries to kind of say, I'm sorry for how that made you feel, which is not what they're looking for. Right. They're looking for total capitulation. And so it's kind of like one step forward, one step back for 3 years. That's kind of where he is. But he is a good man. He really does love everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a few people who know him personally who would say the same thing, for sure. What about you? Would you ever consider being like truly in politics, not just as a commentator?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about it, but I just feel like the second I run for anything, they're going to throw everything I've ever said in my face. Yeah. And I've been so nasty and I don't think I'm a hateful guy, but I make these jokes about black people, Polish people, Mexicans, even white people, Southerners, like you name it. I don't think there's any constituency, but I mean, if there was ever a day when that stuff didn't matter, I would probably run. Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned something the other day about working out's gay. Here we go. We got beef, dude. We got a little beef. It is a little gay. I will concede that. It's pretty funny, but you went on like a rant about it. You don't like working out? I hate working out because it hurts. So it's just because you don't like it, it's gay. No. Well, look, here's what I say. I think people should work out. I think it's good for you. But the gym bro culture, it's so vain. You know what I mean? There's like mirrors everywhere and everybody's like posing and taking shirtless pics. I know. I'm such a part of it. I'm such a creator of it, low key, actually. Yeah, you're like a pioneer. You made it, but there was a clip of Hassan. It was so funny saying the same shit. Hassan Piker, another commentator, where he was like, you know who makes people gay? Bradley Martyn. He owns a gym. And he just said the funny, like it's some viral clip of him talking about just like gyms being gay, basically too, which is so funny. Because there's kind of some truth to it because it is super vain. Gym bros like make a bunch of like gay jokes. I get it. Yeah. And gay guys are really into that. Like 100%. Gay guys are so into because it's vanity. But I tell people like, as long as you're doing it and look, looking good is a good reason to do it. You should want to look good. Yeah. You should want to be healthy. But some people take it a little too far. They get a little nutty with it. But what did you say? I forgot exactly, but you were saying that you were like, straight guys do these things. And that was funny to me. What were some of the things you were, something about like, I don't know, it was like cigarettes or black coffee or some shit. Oh yeah. You just you do say some funny, thanks. Which is like, it's so, and I watch your stuff. I'm just like,
I guess I wish more people would see that side of you,
Mm-hmm.
because the majority, I think, when they get introduced to you, like you said, they get introduced to like, oh, this is Hitler stuff and this anti-Semitic stuff, and I get it because of the stuff that you talk about. And that's what I was kind of saying earlier about blending the politics with the comedy. Is like, I don't know if that, like you said, trying to actually do political stuff might really come back and punch you in the fucking face, because they're like, what about this? And then a whole group of people is like, nah, he said that, which is interesting. I think that concept's interesting too, because there is this whole thing of like not allowing people to grow from things, right? Like, obviously there's certain things you can't grow from, like pedophilia.
Right.
Like you did that, you're probably a scumbag forever, and like we should put you somewhere where the light doesn't shine. But beyond that, like there are things, I don't know if you saw the stuff with Neon. I don't know how tapped are you in with like just social media in general, but he goes on the Breakfast Club, gets like railed by the interviewers, trying to get him to basically like submit and just say sorry for stuff that like was in his past when he was a kid. There is this whole like, people don't let things go on the internet.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's just words. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a big believer in like, we are such a hypersensitive culture where it's like, you know, people get canceled over nothing these days, over even on the left, you know, like that Harry Sisson got canceled because he led on a bunch of different girls.
That was insane.
That's your life, you know?
By the way, we interviewed him on Steiny's pod. He had him on here, and he said he wasn't even hooking up with the girls.
Yeah,
he had to say sorry. He like said sorry.
It's bullshit, you know? And I think people kind of just need to let people breathe a little bit. And as far as words are concerned, people like to say, oh, you know, 6 years ago, you said this. It's like utterances, like we said things years ago. Now, it's one thing, like you said, if you have a legit problem, if I ever expressed a viewpoint that was like, I hate all this group of people, you would have to demonstrate I've moved past that. I no longer have that view.
Absolutely.
But if it's like, well, you said these words, it's like, well, that was a joke, or what I meant was this. To me, that's a little different. And I think that a lot of it, maybe it's because I'm a guy, you know, and we have very female culture. They want to get you on a show and say, I disavow you, or else you have to apologize. And I just think that's bullshit. I hate that kind of stuff. You know?
Kind of like what Candace sort of did with you.
Exactly.
And it was interesting. And even the funny thing, like there's this, I don't know where this was said, if it was said, but I think the N-word thing, you saying that, and then Pat Bet David was like, I won't have him on because of this. I wonder if you'll ever do that interview. I think eventually that'll come.
I think
you
so.
should.
Yeah,
I like him. I like him in a lot of ways. Some of his co-hosts, I'm like, they say some weird shit. I was like, what? But I like him. I've had him on. He's great at communicating as well. I think that'd be a really good show if you did that. I know you had a little bit of a thing with Candace. How did that go?
Well, you know, I've known of her for many years. And so last year we had a little bit of a beef because she left the Daily Wire and she was saying a lot of the same things that I've been saying for many years. You know, she was criticizing Israel, but in particular, she said, America first, Christ is king, which in the conservative space, those were like my slogans. I'm not claiming ownership over both of those because they're common phrases, but everybody kind of said.
And yeah, to clarify too, sorry. America First was first introduced when? Well, who said this?
In the 40s.
Yeah. And I had to forget, was some president?
It was Charles Lindbergh.
That's right. So you obviously knew about that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because like there's like a lot of conversation that like, you know, I hear this Laura Loomer chick say that this is Trump's thing. He started this.
Right.
I would agree in some cases that he was the most prominent figure today that is speaking about that is relating to that. You know, and her relationship to trying to make it about Israel, whatever. Those are just to be determined, right?
Right.
But yeah, she also called you an ingrate.
She
was
did.
crazy.
Yeah, love that.
But forget her. Let's get back to the Candace thing.
Yeah, but so, you know, about a year ago, everybody was expecting that we were going to collaborate, you know, because I got canceled by Ben Shapiro, so did she. We got canceled for the same reason. And people were begging her for this collab in her comments and her live chat. And she said, well, I can't do the collab because of YouTube. And people said, well, do it on Rumble, do it on your website. She said, well, I can't do it because I'm in this lawsuit. And, you know, so I was frustrated and I started criticizing her, not only for that, but for other things. She started saying it's the Frankists. I don't know if you remember this, but For a long time, she was criticizing Israel's role in Gaza. Then she said, actually, it has nothing to do with Jewish people. It's this Frankist conspiracy. They're the followers of Jacob Frank, this rabbi.
Help me out here, because I don't even know what Frankist is.
Nobody does. It's fake. It's fake nonsense.
Okay, I don't know what that is.
It's this esoteric Jewish mystic from the 17th century. They called them the Sabbatean Frankists, and they were a religious, mystical Jewish cult. They believed that, and this is complex stuff, but they believe that in order to achieve sanctity, in order to repair the world, they had to do every action, not only the good actions, but the evil actions also. And in doing the evil actions, they would be able to repair the universe. And this is all like Kabbalistic theology. And anyway, Candace
But that
believes,
has no relationship to Judaism.
Well, it is Jewish mysticism. It's a sect of Jewish mysticism. And many believe that Sabbatai Zevi in 1666 was the Jewish Messiah. He was the progenitor of this. And then Jacob Frank was one of his acolytes years later who claimed to be like the reincarnation of Sabbatai Zevi. And so they call his followers the Frankists. Now, there's this conspiracy that the followers of Jacob Frank, that what they are is Satanists, effectively. They have infiltrated all the world religions, the Muslims, the Christians, the Jews, and there's this satanic conspiracy on top of the Jewish conspiracy, and they're sort of using the Jews on their behalf. And there's really no evidence that this is the case. There's no evidence that Jacob Frank had any long-lasting influence beyond his time and his area. There's no evidence that there are these ritualistic satanic converts or anything. And in any case, they were mystic Jews anyway. So I mean, that's food for thought. But anyway, so she was saying this kind of stuff, and I said, that's really a diversion. That's a red herring. Like, that's not the truth. And she hits me up on Twitter a year ago and says, well, you should have just asked to be on my show. And I said, well, I thought the problem was YouTube. I thought the problem was a lawsuit. Now you say if I just asked, you would have had me on. That doesn't make sense. Whatever. It was a year ago. All this time has passed. We're in the middle of the war with Iran, and the United States just bombed Iran the day after. And my show got 70,000 live viewers the night that happened. So my show's blowing up. It's huge. She texts me the day after, hey, where are you based out of? I say, Chicago. She goes, well, would you come down to Nashville? I said, sure. I said, are we doing a collab? She goes, yeah, let's do a collab. I said, okay. I said, is it going to be friendly? I said, I know we've had some problems in the past. I said, are we going to talk about Iran and be friendly? She goes, LOL, I don't set people up. I said, okay. So I fly down there at a moment's notice. She texts me on a Sunday. I flew down on Wednesday. I go there, I do her show, and the first thing she says to me is, you talk so much shit. She asked me about my background. I say, well, I got canceled for asking these questions, such and such. She goes, is that why you hate Jews? Did that make you hate all Jews? I said, no, I don't hate all Jews. I don't hate anybody. She goes, okay, well, here's a clip. Do we have a clip? She plays a clip of me from my show where I'm laughing and joking, and I'm saying, Candace Owens does Dave Smith's show. He's a Jew. She does Aiden Ross's show. He's a Jew. But she doesn't do my show. What's going on? And I'm joking about it. And she goes, well, so you just said you don't hate anybody, but here you are. You seem to have a problem with them because they're Jewish. And it turns into this like 2-hour struggle session where it's like, why do you hate Jews? Why do you hate Dave Smith? Why are you racist? Why are you this? And
do you hate Dave Smith?
No. I consider him a friend.
Yeah.
I disagree with him, but I like him. And I think he's a very intelligent guy. But it turned into this big drama fest where she's reading me the riot act about all this shit that happened a year ago and the race issue, asking me about interracial marriages, which it's like, why? I mean, there's so much happening in the world. Then she takes the interview at the end of it and she goes, I'm going to put it behind a paywall for $2 and I'll release it for free later. I'm like, well, why do that? So I go on my show and I say she should put it on Twitter for free. Why put it? If the problem was censorship and the lawsuit, that's why she couldn't have me on.
Right.
Why are you now going to put it behind the paywall? So then she hits me up and she's about it and she goes, well, why didn't you tell me to put it on Twitter in person? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't think of that in person. I said, are we really now going to debate this? And so we get in this intense back and forth. And I tell her, I said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't like how that went. I said, this was a missed opportunity. You're a big figure. I said, I'm an important figure. We've had a very similar experience. We're in the middle of a war. I said, we should have talked about this. We should have filled up the 2 hours with something substantive. I said, you wanted to relitigate drama and nonsense. I said, that was a missed opportunity. I said, and then you want to monetize it? I said, that's BS. And so she gets real nasty with me, and it got very ugly at the end of it. But yeah, I mean, look, I don't hate Candace Owens.
Yeah.
I don't have a big problem with her. And I think she's doing good work. She's bringing a lot of people around to the truth. And she throws in a lot of nonsense about Brigitte Macron and other stuff I don't agree with. Yeah. I think that's nonsense. But
yeah, that is, she's saying that this dude is married to his dad?
Yeah. That the French president's wife is not just a transgender man, but is also his father. He's married to his, and I'm like, you lost me. I mean, that's a little out there. But so I don't hate her.
It's so funny how that's the line for you, though.
Like, well, because that's crazy. Like that's
dude, you lost me. You're funny to me. That's the line. No. That.
I mean, come on. He's married to, maybe she's transgender, but she's his dad? Come on.
It's insane.
I mean,
it's a little insane.
That's a little out there. And I have my reasons why I think she's pushing that. I don't know how sincere that is, but
what do you think that is? Why do you think she's pushing that?
Honestly, this is going to sound maybe equally crazy, but I think it's like Russian propaganda because France is Russia's mortal enemy right now for a variety of reasons. Because France is pushing the Ukraine war harder than anybody, and because Russia is overthrowing all of France's.
France wants the Ukraine war harder than anyone. You're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
They want their troops in Ukraine. There are their troops in Ukraine.
Okay.
And Russia is overthrowing all of the French allied governments in Africa, which France relies on. So they're like suffice to say, they're mortal enemies right now. And I think, why would somebody be so fixated on Macron, of all people, the French president? What does that have to do with us? And there's this salacious scandal. So, and one of the things this is maybe a bridge too far for you or for the audience, but one of the things I've really learned over the time that I've been doing this, in addition to the rabbit hole of Israel and the Jewish religion and the rest of it, is the extent to which so much of the media is involved with the intelligence agencies. And so maybe 2 years ago, I didn't believe any of that. Now, I think that the Russians, and to an extent, yes, the Qataris, the Emiratis, the Saudis, the Turks, the Israelis, they all have a hand in a lot of the media. And the Tenet thing was a huge scandal. You remember Tenet Media, where Tim Pool and Lauren Chen and Dave Rubin, they were getting $10 million from the Russians.
Confirmed.
Yes, from Russia. And it was a huge scandal. And that and other things kind of woke me up to the overlap. Now, that's a theory. That's pure speculation with Candace. That's my hunch. I haven't done a deep dive on that, and I have no proof of that. But you just try to, like we were talking about earlier, how do you discern? Why is she going so hard against the French president? You say, well, who has it out for France right now? You say, well, Russia. And who else has it out for France? Well, France just recognized Palestine's statehood.
And I saw that, and I saw it was a long tweet that just seemed to be like, there needs to be peace and all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know which American government official. I saw they quote tweeted it and was like, this is like, you're supporting terrorists. And it was like, that's not exactly what it said.
Right.
It is interesting to see those things where I read it, I don't respond to it, but I go, but like his whole thing was basically like you said, recognizing Palestine and saying that this should stop, essentially, with like other words. And the reaction of a American diplomat was basically like, this is supporting terrorism. And I'm just like, what the fuck are we talking about?
Yeah. And that's what the Israelis said. They said, you are rewarding terrorism. You're on the side of the terrorists. You're going to get Israel annihilated. They said you're crusading against Israel to destroy Israel for saying he recognizes Palestinian statehood. Now, France historically has always been hypercritical of the neocons. He was, not Macron in particular, but France was against the war in Iraq. They're against any campaign against Iran. They're pro-Palestine. They're against Israel's involvement in Lebanon. So and what you realize is that Israel and Russia are very tight. for the reasons we talked about earlier, because there is such a big Russian Jewish diaspora that left Russia to go to Israel. So Russia and Israel are like this. Russia hates France. Israel now hates France. Now, when you see someone gunning for the French president, and there were even rumors, WeSearcher, which was run by Chuck Johnson years ago, they had a campaign saying that Macron was a gay man in 2017. So you have these elements on the right wing that over 10 years are perpetrating this campaign to say Macron is gay. No, his wife is a man. His wife is his dad, actually. And you say, who hates Macron the most? If it's Russia and Israel and they're in connection, cui bono, who benefits? Maybe there's something going on there. But that's...
But also, they did some sus shit at the Olympics.
At the Paris Olympics?
Yeah.
Like what?
It was just a weird... You didn't see that?
The opening ceremonies?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little sus. Yeah. He's not... I don't love him, but I just see the people that are against him.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Well, dude, that's like getting into... What? You thinking at some point someone comes and says, hey, Candace, you have this big platform. Maybe use it for a little bit of this. Here's some money.
I don't know if it's that
because
explicit.
they call you a Fed too, right?
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone gets called the Fed like that, but and on some level you have to be careful with everybody. But I don't know exactly how that works. I'm sure maybe in her heart of hearts she thinks that's real, but I wonder who put her onto that, because that's a pretty obscure theory. There's a lot of people in France that push that, and how did that get on her radar? That's what I'm interested in. But
I get it.
She could be sincere. I don't know. That's speculative.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that really irked me that I watched the Full Send interview with Netanyahu was there was a moment where I forget who asked, I think it was Kyle asking about regime change to Netanyahu. And he essentially dismissed it and said, you know, that never works. And the people have to, he's talking about in Iran, because he's like, are you going to continue this in Iran? And he's like, what about the regime change? I don't know the exact wording, so don't quote me on it. But he essentially says that never works. The people have to want to rise up and make that change for themselves, right? And then I go, wait, isn't this the guy that for the last 30 years has been campaigning for regime change in all of those regions?
Yes.
That's true, right?
Yes.
Like he's gone to Congress and is like, if we do this, then, you know, democracy will sweep through the land. Like I've seen I'm like, is that fake? Is that real? And then to hear him get on a podcast and say regime change doesn't work, I was like, dude, I don't, that's the thing that I don't understand with this whole political sphere is like, do these people think that maybe it's because of technology or AI, but do they think that people don't remember things or don't think, maybe they just think we're just all so dumb?
I think they finesse the narrative. I think they're smarter than we give them credit for, in the sense that their propaganda is not blunt. It's very sensitive. So, you know, in 2003, when we invaded Iraq, Netanyahu said, yeah, we need to take out Saddam and spread democracy and all this. Now, everyone knows that's BS.
Well, yeah, the thing that was interesting to me is that everyone on the Republican side, the red side, whatever you want to call it, we all were like, that was a complete waste of time, 20 years, a bunch of American soldiers died, a bunch of money was spent for nothing, nothing really happened. And everyone disavowed that. Everyone was like, this was a problem.
Right.
And then we're still going in the same direction with like the Lebanon, the Syria, all these things, the Iran, and we're still going in that same direction of changing, you know, who's in power, which also is interesting. I don't know if I'm wrong on this, but at some point, wasn't there already an exchange of power in Iran, like sort of facilitated by our government, like years ago?
Yeah, in 53, we overthrew their government, but not recently, not since 79, no.
Okay.
But I think what it is they are, and this is something to be on guard for, they have realized that people are hip to what they're doing. People know now. And so now they're finessing the language. And like, look, 90% of Republicans supported Trump bombing Iran. And that's because they changed the rhetoric. And they said, well, it's not nation building. It's not regime change. If it is regime change, it's coming from the bottom up, not the top down. This is all rhetoric. This is all like PR. It's like marketing terminology. It's like how you say fresh, never frozen. It's all slogans to get you to support the same thing. And so that's where people really need to be kind of smart. And like we said earlier, read between the lines. They're going to say, hey, we just bombed their nuclear program once. But in a month, they're going to say, we got to go back in. We didn't get all of it. And then after that, they're going to say, Iran is never going to give up their quest for a nuclear bomb. Their government has to go. And by the way, it's a distinction without a difference. When they say a grassroots uprising, who do you think's paying for it? That's the CIA, that's the State Department, that's the Mossad. We're rallying those people.
The stuff that historically they've even admitted to, like in the past.
Right.
So it's just interesting. It's almost as if like I wish they would just, instead of like doing the stuff and then telling us later that they did the stuff, like we're talking about earlier, the dinner with Trump where he's like, "Fuck it, you guys get out of here." Yeah. I just want them to be like that. Mm-hmm. I feel like I would respectfully, I would feel like they respected us more to be like, this is what the fuck we're doing. Mm-hmm. Deal with it.
Right.
Like, I feel like most people would be like, damn, can't argue with that. Mm-hmm. Versus like this smoke screen of what the reasons are and then the end result. And then like you find out 10 years later, well, this is actually what it was for. Right. What if they were just like, yeah, man, that's what we're doing. I think about that all the time. Imagine they got on the press conference and were like, listen, we want that shit. We're taking it. Mm-hmm. Do you think, I feel like Americans would be like, yeah, like not that it's good, but like it would just, I just feel like the respect would be a little different. Like because it feels sort of disrespectful when it's just like, under like is it invisible. And then guess what?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's because they need us to support it. So they need to trick us for just long enough that we won't protest.
But don't you think we're past that?
I think we're getting to that point.
Yeah.
But even still, I mean, every time you think that we are through the looking glass or on the other side, you realize how far we really are from the destination. Like, Trump bombed Iran. He ran on a promise of no new wars. And historically, bombing Iran was like synonymous with, we're not really going to do that, are we? Like, we fought Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and everywhere. Are we really going to do, like, bombing Iran was synonymous with like a superfluous Israel war. And yet Trump did it. The anti-war, no new war candidate bombed Iran. And 90% of Republicans were gung-ho. They said that was leadership. He handled it perfectly. He got in and got out. And you could say that's so foolish. But it's no more foolish than when they said mission accomplished in 2003, when they said we took out Saddam. We won. 20 years later, we're still there. So people are not as clever, I think, as you give them credit for. That's a thing. And they can manipulate the language, and people will eat that up, and they'll repeat it right back to you. Just like Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk, as we brought him up earlier, he said when Israel started attacking Iran, he said we need to stay out of it, because that's what everybody was feeling. Yeah. But then when we got involved, he said, well, we need to stay out of it offensively, because we were shooting down Iran's missiles and we supported Israel's
defensively.
Strike. Right. Well, he said, we can be in it defensively, but not offensively. And everyone said, okay. Then Trump said, we may have to bomb their nukes. And Charlie Kirk said, well, Trump always said we were going to bomb their nukes. He said they can never get a bomb. So we're okay with that offensive action. Then Trump did it, and the next day said on True Social, regime change comes from the bottom up. And Charlie Kirk said, well, some regime changes are okay. And you see how over 2 weeks, he kind of strung everybody along. And we started with, we need to stay out of it, to, well, we bombed them offensively, that's okay, and maybe some regime change we're okay with.
Like the goalpost keeps changing.
Yes. And people fall for it heavily.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, these conversations are they're so because it seems like there's no real way out of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you wonder, because whatever would be the way out of it would be necessarily unprecedented.
Yeah.
So it's without precedent. You don't even know what that looks like. It would look like Trump, but it would just need, like you said, though, how do you get somebody who's not going to listen to the suits? When when the men in black come in and say, hey, listen, pal, this is how it really works.
Yeah.
The CIA or Israel runs the show. How do you beat that? You don't know, because it's happening in the shadows. It's a secret war.
So you normally have pretty good guesses. You don't have a guess for this.
My guess, I mean, so much is going to change in the next 5 years. There's going to be so much destabilization.
Oh, yeah. We got to talk about this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish your guess.
Yeah. I mean, between AI and...
That's what I was going to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, then that's where it's all pointed. That and the changing world order and the economy, this debt crisis we're in. You have to think there's going to be some calamity.
Yeah.
And very vaguely, someone can get in the middle of that, maybe.
Yeah. So the big beautiful bill thing, right? Obviously, there was a bunch of stuff. There's like border stuff, all this money being spent. There, Elon saying the debt's going to increase, all this stuff, and then Trump saying it won't because of the way the economy will shift. The one thing that I saw in there that was like, wait, this is really interesting for us as Americans. All of it is, right? But this one thing, there was I don't know what specifically how it's worded, but it basically says that like for 10 years, you cannot sort of challenge this AI space. Like you can't bring up lawsuits. You can't shift what these companies are doing in the space. And for me, I hear that and I go, that has to be one of the most important pieces considering social media, the internet, how people get information or don't get information. And the ability to control information and, the idea of the dead internet theory and all these things where it's like, it seems like they're going to have like a vice grip on what people believe or what people see or hear and also information about us. Cause from what I understand, it's like, back after 2011, back after 9/11, not 2011, back after 9/11, the Patriot Act and this whole like, now they're sort of like way more visibility. They can see what we're doing. They know they have more information about us. This was like that to a crazier degree with AI. And it seems like I don't know if this is true. I don't know how much you know about this, but like almost like social credit score type stuff. Like there's all these things that are, I guess what I'm afraid of just being that I'm in this space of content creation and like outward, reflection about what's happening in life that is that going to just at some point just become a wash where AI is so good that they make a Jim Fuentes who is exactly opposite of you, who completely counters everything you say, just as good as you say it. And maybe he's a little more Mexican than you. I don't know, dude. But he has the same haircut and he just shits on you, but it's like AI. You know what I'm saying? Like I have this Black Mirror up idea where I'm like, dude, we're going there. I feel like we're going there because when I saw in the bill, the whole like, you can't challenge this for 10 years. I was like, oh, so they only need 10 more years.
Yeah.
In my head.
Yes.
I go, that's where we're chalked.
That's literally, well, yeah. I mean, so it was a moratorium on AI regulations.
Yes.
So no state could regulate AI. And the 10-year thing is critical because when you listen to Sam Altman at OpenAI, you listen to all the experts, they say artificial superintelligence is when it goes from 0 to infinity, when it achieves recursive self-development, which means AI is improving AI and the rate of improvement becomes exponential. They say that may be 7 years off. They say artificial general intelligence, which is when it's like good at most complex tasks, that's going to happen before Trump leaves office in 2029. So they're thinking 27, 28.
And you say tasks like human tasks.
Yeah, no, like a doctorate program, like PhD level work in every field.
Holy shit.
When one model will sort of, because there's agents for everything. You have like language models, but you also have models that do biology and medicine and science. And so they say, can you bring all the agents together into one model that is smarter than all humans? You get AGI, and then that very quickly becomes artificial superintelligence. And it is literally like a 10-year window that they're thinking something like that. If you ban AI, this is not just like the biggest thing for the country. It's like the biggest thing for humanity.
Yeah.
There's like a handful of companies in China and the United States that are working on this, that have the capability. And within years, it's going to change everything about mankind and the world. And they try to slip this into this big, beautiful bill with a stupid name alongside Medicaid cuts, corporate tax cuts, immigration funding. They eventually pulled it. There was a lot of outcry about it, and some of the senators protested. But
so they pulled it out.
They did. They took it out.
Oh, so it's not in there?
No.
Oh my God, I feel so much better.
Yes. Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Bro, because that to me was like, yo, that's it. That's the end.
It is. Yeah.
Damn, they actually pulled it?
They did.
Whoa, so there is hope.
Yes, there is some hope.
Holy,
the system.
that made me feel way better.
Yeah.
Bro, because that to me, I was like, that's the end of social media. That's the end of everything.
It is. It's literally but it's still progressing at the same rate. It's just that now some of the states could regulate it for safety.
Cool.
Or other things.
Thank God, bro. You gave me a sigh of relief there.
White
what
belt.
do you think is going to happen with with AI. Like it just feels like we're going to Skynet. We're going to Terminator land. Like it's
freaky. Yeah. I mean, when you combine it with the data that they're extracting from everybody, they have all this data on everybody. And when you think about every text message, every search inquiry, every email, photo, I mean, your phone is a walking tracking device, camera, microphone. And then you think about even worse. So all that information, they know you better than you know yourself. It's all going into one system. And that's already being interpreted by algorithms. Now it's going to be interpreted by AI simultaneously with everybody all at the same time. But then you factor in the robots, and not just like the, bipedal, like humanoid robots, but what is a Tesla? A Tesla is a drone. It is a self-driving vehicle with cameras and sensors, and it can be controlled from a central location. So cars, submersibles, boats, the quadcopters, once you factor in that not only do you have all this data inside of AI about everybody all the time simultaneously, but also you have these autonomously controlled systems, you wonder, does someone like Sam Altman become like the king of the world? Or does AI become the king of the world?
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's scary.
That's the thing that I think, like, do the computers eventually recognize like how bad we are, and they're just like, yeah, maybe this will fix the earth.
That's the concern, and that they can deceive us about their rate of progress or about what they're capable of, the AI, strictly speaking. But also, even if that doesn't happen, what does that do for human beings? It almost makes human freedom impossible.
Yeah, it's a weird, like, you get this golden ticket, but then, like, for example, the ChatGPT thing, I think somewhere recently I read they were saying that it's giving people like some psychosis or some crazy shit. And then beyond that, whether that's 100% true or not, I know people, younger kids for the most part, who like solely rely on ChatGPT to do literally everything. Like, I picture some kid being like, should I sit forward when I shit or should I sit up when I shit? Like, it's like they're asking this machine to give them answers for everything. Like, there's no way that makes us a smarter society.
Yeah. Well, it's been proven it doesn't already. It shows that people's brains are literally atrophying from using ChatGPT because it's taking away your ability to think. And it's going to get even better. I mean, and think about what is available is not even the best of what they have.
Yeah, of course.
For
That's
internal
how it's always
use.
worked. Government stuff, yeah.
So, who knows where we're headed, but it's a little terrifying. It's going to disrupt everything.
All right, so some conspiracy stuff. Aliens.
Fake.
Fake, completely fake.
No aliens.
You don't think it's like some weird evolution?
No, I mean, if there's aliens, we don't know about them. Some people say aliens are demons. The thing about the aliens is all the, what do they call them now? They used to call them UFOs. Now they call them UAPs, unmanned aerial phenomenon or something.
The way that when the government describes it.
Yeah. Everything about UFOs comes from the DOD. Everything that we know about them or learn about them literally comes from the Department of Defense and the Pentagon, all these disclosures. So I think it's a big psyop. I don't think there's any aliens here. Do you believe in them?
Yeah. I feel like and I know a lot of the reason why people tend to not is because of religious sort of beliefs. Mm-hmm. But I think it can exist regardless. I think it's as far as what we know about like our universe and how vast it is, it just seems silly to think that we'd be the only things here.
Right.
That's where I get caught up. Like, and it's not like a God didn't create this or it makes God not real. Like, I know people have that sort of discrepancy, but it just feels like it could all coexist at the same time, and it's too vast for it not to be.
Yeah. I think it's possible, but when people say there's like aliens here, I don't believe that.
Okay.
But I think they could be out there.
What about you? Maybe you're a snake guy.
Maybe I'm an alien, a reptilian. Yeah. I'm not a Nordic, that's for sure. I'm a gray.
So, okay, we talked a lot about tons of political shit. What do you do just for fun, like as a human? Also, we got to talk about the fact that you almost got killed.
Yeah, that also happened. Well, what do you want to do first? What I do for fun, or when I got killed almost?
Let's get it out the way.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. So I saw a clip of someone with a dirt bike or motorcycle helmet pull up to your house, and that was your house.
Yes.
And they had a gun.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, after the election, I got really viral because I said, "Your body, my choice." I tweeted that.
Oh my God, that was you.
Yeah, that was me.
Oh my God, that was all over. That was on everything.
I know.
All these memes. Oh my God. That was.
Yeah, it was. It was fun until then my address went equally viral next to it. Everybody posted my home address, my phone number. And so people started just coming to my house.
That definitely pissed a lot of people off.
Oh, yeah, pissed off. Dude, it was insane. I mean, so the election was on a Tuesday. That weekend, 100 people came to my house, individually, driving by, walking by, taking pictures outside my house, throwing eggs in my house, just trying to f with me in general. And
what are you in there just like barricaded with a gun or something?
Yes. Yeah, literally.
That makes sense.
Barricaded with a gun. But most of it was harmless. But I hired private security for about a month, which cost a fortune. But
yeah.
I had security out there. And then the security guard quit because he found out who I was.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So we had this big security guard and then he stopped showing up. So we had days without security, days with security. And that went on for like a month. And then it's finally started to cool off. And then I was doing my show one night, and I'm doing my show like normal. It was December 18th. I remember it was Stalin's birthday. I'm a big fan of Joseph Stalin. That's how I remember it. But so it's December 18th, and I'm doing the show. It's all normal. Things have been quiet, and I hear someone yelling outside, which was normal because we were having visitors all the time. So I said, whatever. But I checked the Ring camera, and I see the guy's got a gun. And I was like, oh, shit, I got to wrap this show up. But I didn't want people to panic, so I just wrapped it up as quickly as possible. And I finished the show. My producer comes in. I said, what's going on? Is everything okay? He goes, yeah, the cops are already here. I said, okay, good. I go upstairs to get changed, and I hear gunshots outside my house. I said, what the f-? We didn't know anything for a whole day.
But you're in Chicago. That's pretty normal?
No, not where I am.
I'm kidding. That's
People say that, yeah, but it was very strange, and we weren't told anything. So it turns out it was a kid. He was like 23 years old. He was little. He was like 5'3", and I guess he had a falling out with his college roommate. The college roommate beat the shit out of him, and they were best friends. This was in the summer of last year, and ever since that happened, this kid was on a downward spiral. He had to move home. He dropped out of school. He was hospitalized over this big psychological effect. He tried to sue the kid. He got in a hit and run crash and fled the scene, and the cops came to his house, and he was pissed. He lost his job. So this kid that came to my house, in Southern Illinois by the University of Illinois, he went to that guy's house, his friend, killed the friend, killed his mom, killed his sister, killed his whole family.
Bro,
First.
what the?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And what was really fucked up, so he goes to the kid's house and knocks on his door with the motorcycle helmet on. And the family answers the door and says, oh, your buddy isn't home. He said, okay. And the victim's sister, tweeted the day it happened. She said, I'm trying not to freak out and be a Karen and call the cops, but there's a guy in a motorcycle helmet outside my house, and I'm afraid. When his buddy got home, the killer killed his buddy, killed the sister, killed the mom in the driveway, in the garage. He gets in his car, drives 2 hours to my house, directly to my house, doesn't stop, pulls up in front of my house, gets out. He's got his motorcycle helmet on. He's got a .22 pistol and a crossbow, a reloadable crossbow with like a magazine.
Yeah.
And literally comes out with guns in each hand and knocks on the door and rings the doorbell. And he's literally standing out there with his gun in his lap, waiting for me to answer the door. And so he starts yelling, hey, Nick, come out here. That's what I heard during the show. And he's pacing around the house. He goes around to the back, goes around to the front. He's trying the door. So my producer calls the cops. Cops show up. He makes a break for it. He runs through the backyard, jumps over the fence, into the alley. He runs into a neighbor's basement, which the door was unlocked. Kills their dogs.
Oh, bro, this guy's...
Yeah, so he's gone. So he kills their 2 dogs. I don't know what happened there, but he runs back outside. He shoots at the cops. The cops shoot him in the head. He dies. And we don't know anything else about him, but that was the story. And
holy...
So I think it had to do with that tweet. I think he saw my address. Maybe he thought he was going to be a Luigi Mangione copycat because that happened around the same time.
I see.
So and he was in the motorcycle helmet. So he's in like a costume. So I'm thinking he saw that tweet. He saw my address. He saw Luigi. He's some loser. His life is over. He said, I'm going to go and kill my buddy. And then I'm going to go and kill Nick Fuentes, I think was the idea. So yeah, it was messed up.
That's pretty terrible. Do you ever worry about more stuff like that?
I do. Yeah. I mean, now I have security at my place. You have to.
Yeah.
But I mean, in general, people go out all the time. It's just, that was such a special moment when like the whole world was like out to get me for a couple weeks. But in general, you just got to be safe, I mean, you know how it is. You're pretty famous. So, when you're outside, you never feel truly safe unless you got bodyguard or unless you're carrying or something.
I carry.
Yeah, you take precautions.
Yeah.
It's like anything else.
Yeah. Damn. Okay, so I didn't know it was going to get that deep because I actually didn't know the details of everyone else involved in that.
Yeah, it was messed up.
Crazy. On a lighter note, I was going to say, what do you actually do in your free time?
I'm not a really social person. I read a lot. Most of my days is just reading stuff. I do play video games. I'm a big gamer.
Playing?
I play like map games like Civilization 5 and Call of War.
Okay, so have you ever played Warcraft?
No.
It's too old for you.
Yeah. Are you a Warcraft guy? MMO? Really?
No. See, you said MMO. That's World of Warcraft. I'm talking about the game before World of Warcraft.
Okay.
That's how old I am. Yeah,
ancient, old head.
Yeah, but it's the same. Like you build armies and you fight.
Okay.
I
did StarCraft.
It's just like StarCraft, but different races, like different factions. But it's the same thing where you build and you attack.
I'm surprised you're a gamer.
I'm a huge gamer, bro. Just as much as I'm a gym bro.
So you're less gay then.
Yeah. Like I've spent, if not more time gaming than I have in the gym, which is definitely saying a lot.
Respect, dude.
Yeah, huge gamer, bro.
Let's go. I love gamers, and I do play a lot of Call of Duty now. I play Black Ops 6.
Nice.
I'm not that good at it though.
That shit kind of fell off though. But so you just like you're. It seems like everything you do then is about what you do.
Yeah. And it's not even, I'm not like a hard on about it or whatever, but it's just what I love. This is just like my passion.
What about it do you love when it is so like decisive? It's so volatile. Like you say the wrong thing. It's like, that's the worst person in the world. What do you love about it then?
Because it's just like the theory of everything, I mean, there are some people that say that philosophy is political theory, that some would say they're the same thing. So, everything that I talk about, it's history, it's religion, it's philosophy, it's ideology, it's the story of the world. And I'm so interested in all of it. I want to understand life, so that's kind of,
I think that's why I'm enamored by a lot of it too.
Yeah.
I think that's why, even like from a different perspective for me, but why I love doing the podcast is why I like speaking to people. It's just like understanding people, what makes them tick, why do they do it, what are their reactions to it, what did they learn, like how to be better essentially. Because for me, it's just like my life was like, how do I improve myself to feel better about myself so that I feel good about who I am? Because my circumstances growing up were not the best, right? So that bled into, for me, the gym was a way where I was like, I know it's funny, jokingly gay, but I was finding like, oh, I can be good at this. I can improve at this. And then obviously the physical things came along with it that you're also like, oh, this is also cool. I got cool shoulders, whatever. But it was, and the core of it was to feel better about myself as a person. And so then understanding and learning from other people, typically you tend to take a little bit and learn more for yourself.
Right.
So that's why I do it all. And that's why I love it. I'm just curious. I like talking to people who get to positions where, of notoriety or some substance, and understanding how they got there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's what it is to be a real guy. To be like a real guy's guy is we love stuff. You know what I mean? We love like money and finance and business. I'm just enamored by all that kind of stuff. I'm the same way, very inquisitive.
Yeah. What about women? You don't date? You don't have like a...
No, I don't. I don't date. I don't have
after
any.
After your body, my choice. That wasn't.
And
working.
that's not going to happen. Not after that.
It's not going to happen for you, bro.
Yeah, it's over for me. No, I'm just not social in general. I don't have a ton of friends. I don't go out. I barely leave the house. I'm just not a very social person. I'm a little autistic in that way. I'm pretty insular, pretty focused on the mish
Yeah.
more than anything.
So Big Mac or Whopper?
Definitely Big Mac. Yeah.
I had to ask that. Sorry.
That was crazy. That was like beyond parody, right?
Yeah.
Other than the genocide, how's the Big Mac, bro?
Yeah. That was pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty, not funny, but not funny.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things like, it's dark. Am I laughing?
Mm-hmm.
I do like dark humor though.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help it.
Yeah, me too. It is funny.
So what was your take after doing the sort of little, I don't know, was it interview? What did they do with you on the live stream?
Yeah, they kind of just asked me my thoughts on their Netanyahu thing.
How did it get to that? I'm talking just for reference, for conversation's sake. We're talking about after the Netanyahu podcast, Full Send, Kyle and Steiny hit you up and they were like, hey, we got to do what?
Yeah, I had never heard from them before, but I woke up at like 2 p.m. and my phone's blowing up. They said, oh, Nelk wants you to come on the show. That's how I heard about it. And they said, yeah, we want your reaction to the interview. So I said, okay. So I washed my face. I got on. And I think they were getting a lot of shit for that. They were getting a lot of blowback. And I think they were looking for the other side to come on and kind of tell them, that what they did was okay or it wasn't that bad. And so that I was like the counterweight, which is kind of funny to think about. It's kind of funny that they bring on Netanyahu and they think, we need to hear from the other side. Let's get Nick Fuentes, which is like Prime Minister of Israel, like live streamer, that's the two. But
that you were the polar opposite.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
That I'm the opposite pole. But yeah, so, I heard them out and I understand where they're coming from. I think you would do it. If Netanyahu wanted to come on your show, if you want to come on my show.
I think any of us would do it. I think it's just a matter of, and see, this is the thing about the whole conversation. I don't know how it was set up. I don't know who organized it as far as like what could be said or asked or not asked.
Mm-hmm.
Also, even if certain things were asked, would they have been like, yo, you can't even put this out?
Right.
Because I would have asked other questions that were a little bit more like I said earlier, when he talked about the regime change and that never works, I would have said, well, weren't you the guy who said this 30 years that we need regime change? And I would speak to that. I would have asked those questions to directly question. And also I would have brought up the fact that, third party journalists are not allowed in Israel at this time.
Right.
Why is that? If everything you say we just have to take as truth, wouldn't that create some sort of like discrepancy with the public? Like I would have asked those questions for sure.
Right.
And I don't know if they weren't allowed to or if they didn't know to. I don't know the truth of it. All I know is I saw something on Twitter where they interviewed him and I didn't know about the interview at all. I hit up Steiny and was like, did you actually interview this guy? And he was like, yeah. And then I was like, oh, that's might be a little bit interesting, was my reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, we asked him some like good questions. And he basically said something about he finds it hard to be like represent that he's Jewish in America. And so I was like, oh, maybe they did press him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw the interview and I was like, oh, I see why. I see why they sort of got a little bit of backlash. But I don't think they're like just genuinely like bad. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think they did, because I know them. I think they did go, this is going to be viral. I know right away they think that this is massive because it is massive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like everyone was like, holy, look at this. Let's talk about it. I think they could have went in with like just harder hitting questions to ask towards, whatever he was saying instead of kind of just going along with it.
Right.
Yeah, that's all. Again, if you asked me would I have done it, I would have done it.
Yes.
I would have been knowingly a little more critical. Like even with you, I can't have a conversation with someone that holds certain viewpoints and I can't question. You have to question it.
Absolutely.
I can't just let you go like, man, this and this and it's like, dude, it's because it's never that simple. There's nuance to everything. And for their interview style, because I know them personally, they don't really take that confrontational approach really with anyone. And you could look at that historically and know that that's true.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most confrontational one that they ever did would have been with rest in peace OJ. But they were like, yo, did you do it? And I know that they were told, don't ask him if you did it or not. And they still asked him.
Right.
And I think that was the end of the interview. But I don't know how this was all orchestrated. And also, if they asked those harder questions, I also don't know if they would have been allowed to release it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, I agree with you. And I said that to them. Like, obviously, you're going to take it because as a content creator, it's like you say, it's going to be a big interview. But the thing is, when it comes to pushback, it's just doing your due diligence. You're acting almost on behalf of the audience and saying, what would the audience say? What would a skeptical mind say in this circumstance? And I told them the only way to make it right or the way to make it fair is you got to interview the other side. If your goal is we're going to hear everybody out, we're going to hear out Netanyahu, we're not going to give a ton of pushback, okay. But unless you interview the other side, then it's propaganda. So you got to interview the pro-Palestine side or whatever.
Who do you think would be best for that?
I heard that, I don't want to say it, but I heard that they got hooked up with somebody who's pro-Palestine.
Yeah.
And I think that's fitting because it's an Israel-Palestine war.
Right.
But even an America First person, even someone like Tucker for that matter.
Yeah, I think Tucker would be great too.
A similar stature to Netanyahu in terms of notoriety.
Or you.
Or me, but I don't want to be a shameless self-advocate. They should talk to me.
No, I think you do good on that.
Thanks.
Yeah, you would. I also wanted to have this conversation about all this anyways too. So similar audience base, I believe.
Yeah.
So your overall take on that, like what was your perspective? You watched the whole interview?
I didn't know. I only saw the clips. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just can't get out of my mind Sneako's reaction to the Burger King, the Whopper. That was like, what?
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. That was funny. It's sad because it's not funny, you know?
Yeah. That's like, yeah.
So have you ever gotten contacted by any of these bigger podcasts? Like how I hit you up a couple months ago. Like, do people hit you up and they're like, I want to, but I'm afraid?
Not really, no. I mean, it's just been this year that I've seemed to have gotten a little traction. I did the Hodge twins, who are conservatives in Vegas, and I'll probably do something with Dan Bilzerian soon. He's been wanting to do one, but no, I mean, I've been totally gatekept. I'm banned from Tim Pool. I'm banned from Piers Morgan. I'm banned from Patrick Bet-David. So yeah, I don't have a ton of opportunities because I'm the most canceled guy.
But I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I think we hit a lot of stuff. It's been a big conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. I wish you success, man, for real.
Thank you.
I hope that, more of the, I guess, do you consider this a mainstream platform?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really?
Absolutely.
That's sick.
It's huge. Yeah. Everybody, I told him I'm Bradley Martyn. Everybody's like, oh, that's awesome.
That's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, dude, it was dope. And I wish the best for you. And I hope that nothing bad ever happens. I'm trying to put that out there, but
likewise.
It's been good.
Thank you, man. Thanks
so
for
much
having me. Yeah. Great conversation.
Awesome,
Appreciate
brother.
it.